This is the Village of Corrales Governing Body Regular Meeting, July 20th, 2021 at 20 to 7. All right, first thing that we're going to do is call to order, which I've done, and a Pledge of Allegiance. Let's all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'm now going to take the roll. Councilor Lucero.
Here.
Councilor Murray.
Here.
Councilor Knight. Here. Councilor Burkett.
Here.
Councilor Parker.
Here.
Councilor Waldman will not be able to be with us this evening. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't think we had anybody nay, so the agenda is approved. The first thing will be the administrator's report. Administrator Curry.
Can you hear me all right? All right. I'd like to ask Tanya to give a COVID update, please.
Hello? Yep. Okay.
You're good.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors, Administrator Curry. COVID update for today is we did get one new case over the weekend. So it could have been Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So we're at 336. We do know that nationwide, 83% of the cases are now Delta variant. The CDC is reminding people if you're over 60 or over 70, definitely 65 is a good number too. Delta variant that's where the breakthrough cases are coming if you're over those ages, or if you're on any immune suppressing kind of medication or condition. So please watch for that. There have not been a ton of breakthroughs. And what the CDC is considering a breakthrough is symptomatic enough to be in a hospital. They're not counting people who are just getting sick and staying at home. It's only the symptomatics. So they are recommending anyone in that age group should still be wearing masks out and social distancing, because we still don't know exactly what effects our vaccines are going to have completely on Delta. The ACIP, which is a division of the CDC, will be meeting on July 22nd to start talking about boosters for certain populations and if it's needed yet. They're going to be looking not only at the Pfizer data that's come out, but they're tracking their own data. They have a cohorts of people that they're tracking to see how well it's working. We figure it'll be a week to 2 weeks before we actually have any information on boosters and how that's going to go. What we do know is that Israel is already doing boosters. They started a week ago yesterday definitely for their organ transplants and their older population. France and Great Britain are going to be starting their boosters in September, and they have a whole plan laid out. They're going to start with people 70 or older because they know that's the at-risk population that's vaccinated. Other than that, we're still doing vaccines at the rec center. We're doing vaccines at the fire station. We're still doing homebound and just trying to make sure we can get a vaccine to everyone who wants one. And I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Have any questions for Candela?
Thank you
very much, as always. Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Next thing I'd like to report on is the first meeting was held of the tree committee, and John Thompson is chair and Amy Bell is secretary. They will be meeting monthly on the first Monday of every month is their plan at this point. And so I anticipate having them come to the governing body sometime soon and talk about their goals of the committee and how they're going to interact with the village. But we have 5 very enthusiastic members, and they've been working on it for well over a year. And then thanks to Councilor Lucero, it came before the body and was passed. Their focus that they're looking at is education, both for the village and for the residents of the village as far as tree planting, best types of trees for the type of soils and things like that. So I'm going to be their liaison with the village, and I look forward to working with them. And I think they're a good group of people and with a lot of knowledge that they're going to bring to the village. This morning, the mayor and I had the opportunity to visit with the DOT, and we met with our contact, Jill Mosier. We met with the head engineer for District 3 and also the commissioner for District 3. And the purpose of the meeting was road transfer consideration of Corrales Road. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but they did give us some advantages and disadvantages. They are ready and willing to come back to the governing body anytime to have a full discussion about this regarding the full aspects of it. I think the one thing that was informative to me and the mayor both this morning is that they gave some very good examples of if they had done a complete rebuild on the road, or if they were to do a complete rebuild on the road prior to the time that the village would consider taking it over, the road would look completely different than what you see it now. It would affect businesses up and down Corrales Road to meet their compliance standards that they have to follow, both from the state and to a certain level, the federal level. So, but that, when they come to make a presentation, which I hopefully will be in the next 60 days, to visit with the council and start getting input from the community and input from, of course, the council before a decision would be made on such a thing. But I give you that as a heads up because it's something that we're going to have to consider. Right now, Mike's here and he could add anything to this if he wanted to, but they finished the southbound lane all the way to the end today. And so they'll start working on the north side tomorrow, and we anticipate that they will be done hopefully in the next 10 days. And we discussed, Michael's been out on the road with them discussing any potential flaws or defects that are existing as they put down the new repaved asphalt, and seeing if there's any culverts under there or if there's any faults in the base course that are rising up to the top of the road. But it was explained to us today in this meeting that the engineer for District 3 didn't want to come across when the meeting was held here the last time as being that he was forcing it on us. It was not a mandatory thing. So he actually apologized to the mayor 3 different times if he gave that impression. And but one of the things that they had to do to get the money to do this is they had to stop working on other projects or stop funding other projects so that they could get this repaving done. They used at least 2 different sources of funds to get it done. And the cost, they still didn't give us a total cost, but I think it's going to be, when it's said and done, it's going to be somewhere between $2 and $3 million, if not a little bit more. So after the paving is done, Michael has been working with Margaret and a group of folks here, Margaret from the state DOT and a group of folks here talking about crosswalks, equestrian crosswalks. And I think we've come up with 12 different crossings up and down Corrales Road that people seem to be on board with, both here in the village and with the state. So we anticipate that those markings will come down. We're hoping that they'll be laid down as soon as possible, but they have told us that they'll get them down by the end of the year. And I think I've mentioned before that that's not satisfactory to us, just from a safety point of view. So we will be pressuring them to go ahead and get the markings down and the crossings down as soon as possible. And then the last thing is I'm going to ask Jill Sweeney to talk about bonds and processes. And then after she's done, I'll be glad to take any questions on anything else that you want to ask. Jill?
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is an informational item. As you recall, in 2018, the voters of the village authorized general obligation bonds for conservation easement purposes. And there is a little bit of that authorization left. And we are pleased that the village has come to the point where it can spend that authorization. And so this is just to let you know that at the next meeting, we plan to be in a position to have a preliminary application to the Finance Authority ready for your review. And at that point, we'll move forward with the financing process, likely with the Finance Authority, should that still prove to be the most advantageous source of financing. This potential financing would wrap together two different conservation easement projects. So that will create efficiency and cost saving for the village, as well as wrapping up that 2018 authorization from the voters before it expires. So like I said, we come to you with an application for your review and an your intent to proceed at your next meeting, then back to you with an ordinance following that, and then work through the process, the appraisal process with the taxation and revenue department, all the steps that need to be taken, and have a high degree of confidence that that can be closed before the end of the year. So that'd be very exciting for the village.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Sweeney? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Are there any questions of Ron regarding any of the reports? Department heads? Yes.
Yeah,
Councilor Knight.
I'd like to ask Chief Anthony if he'd come up for a second. I have a couple of things I just wanted to review with him. Hi, Chief. I just wanted to say thank you again for the great job you did putting out that fire with your crew. So the people of District 3 were very impressed, and they thank you very much for keeping it contained.
Thank you, Councilor, Mayor. I really appreciate that.
You had talked about in your June EMS that you still needed to get. The two things you said were a life pack, cardiac monitor, and then a transport ventilator. Can you use any of the COVID money to get those things?
We're currently, Mayor, Councilors, we're currently looking at using some of that money for a ventilator. However, the ventilators are really hard to get. The transport ventilators, they're over the past year we've been looking and we just can't find one. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with a colleague, and he may have some extra somewhere in a supply room that we're going to see if we can get on our rescue in the meantime. And as far as the cardiac monitor, Mayor and I have been working on. Mayor, would you like to?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Block, Sandoval County Commissioner Block is looking at, I guess, helping us, the Village of Corrales Fire Department, purchase a new cardiac monitor. So it's a pretty pricey item. We didn't have the money. It's about $32,000, I think, roughly. And so we're real excited to move forward with that. So hopefully soon we'll have something to present to you, or maybe Commissioner Block himself. So.
Great.
But thank you for keeping track of that. Those are real important items that we put in our reports. And I can assure you everything we put in our report, we're always constantly looking for, ways to fund those. So.
And I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the next page, it says you were looking for funding for flood control measures for property acquisition for holding areas and emergency routes. How are you looking for funds for that? And can you tell us a little bit about what the thought is behind that?
Mayor, councilors, absolutely. So ever since, like the 2009 or 13, I may have the years wrong, but the major floodings we've had, we've come to realize, planning and zoning and public works, water's going to go wherever it wants to go naturally. And we're always trying to find other ways to maybe retain the water. Mr. Chavez has lots of ponds and, scattered throughout the village, but it wouldn't hurt to have a couple of extra, especially on some vacant, barren land that we may be able to purchase in the future, federal dollars to help us with flood mitigation.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for that information.
I do have to say on a lighter note that Chief recently came into some fundraising money.
Yes, ma'am.
Want to tell the
Yeah.
council about that?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. So it all started, Mrs. Thompson came to the fire station. She helps me with our fundraiser with our fire helmets. And she was eating at one of her favorite restaurants here in Cross Prayers Bar, and she was frustrated with John's COVID hair. And I suggested that we maybe do a fundraiser for the fire department and raffle off, and whoever the winner is can choose how they'd like to cut his hair. And it took off. And I believe I turned in the deposit today to the village, to our donation fund. It was like $2,900. So it was fun, and we're going to benefit with that money, and that might help us with a ventilator. So, but thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Chief. All right, if there are no other questions, under D, we're going to move on to the Counselors Forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate. To inform the governing body of an issue concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Do I have any counselors who wish to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the Coriolanus Forum. And this section is for information purposes only. It's not for discussion and debate. To inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. There is a 3-minute time limit. And the first person I have here is Ken Ethloff. Ken, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your last name, sir? Dehoff.
And my wife, Kathleen, is next. Can we just do this together?
You may. First, you need to.
This is all right. Some visual aids.
Is that okay? We usually don't take things that haven't been in the public packet. Why don't you give it to the clerk? Stamp them.
Right.
It's because it doesn't go into the public packet, so members of the public have not been able to see what it is you're handing us.
So I'm Ken Dehoff. This is Kathleen, my wife. We've been neighbors now for 7 months. We're from Placitas. We've been in Placitas since 1988. We moved down for the better weather. We're here to address our recent building permit rejection by Lori and the associated, I think, inappropriate link the council has made between your short-term rental issue and new construction. Your current rules are like treating a grasshopper problem by banning alfalfa. My wife and I bought 4 acres on the northeast end of Corrales Road. We currently have a barn under construction. You can see a concrete slab out there. COVID has delayed it, but it's on its way. This last Friday, I submitted a plan for 4,400 square foot, 3-bedroom home and a 4-car detached garage. Those, I guess you're not going to be able to see it. I'd rather not have my house plan in the public domain, but you know, if you can manage to go see it, that I think that would be worthwhile. Both of those are permissive uses under Part 33 of Section 18. As a part of our design, we had a 600 square foot area I called a casita on my plans. It is connected to the house between the garages and is centrally located to our barn. And there was a kitchen and a bedroom and a small workspace on the plans for that casita. Our application was rejected by Laura yesterday, and a resubmitted version that I have provided here, if you guys want to look at it, which lopped off a bedroom, made it a 2-bedroom house, now on a 4-acre lot, was again rejected just a couple hours ago. It's hot off the press. My first issue is the manner of the rejection. Lori, not Joe, flagged the kitchen in our attached casita and the fact that the casita was not, in her mind, connected enough to our main house. She directed me to add a hallway to connect the casita. Again, if you could see the picture, it'd probably make a little more sense. And her last words, we did this over the phone, and her last words before hanging up on me were, when you give me something that I can approve, I will approve it. Wow, so helpful. Section 45 suggests a little more helpful coaching approach, but I certainly didn't get it.
Sir, your 3 minutes is up. Do you want to cede some time to your wife? She can have 3 minutes.
Can I?
And when I raised a request to the mayor, she only redirected me back to Lori, who doesn't take my calls anymore. It feels to me like you all are on a witch hunt and I'm wearing the pointy hat. We had intended and designed our casita to facilitate our farming, which will generally be a lot dirtier than we want in the rest of the house. The kitchen would be where we clean, render, stage, dry, and other preparation of our crop. Wouldn't all of you rather can 500 pounds of tomatoes somewhere other than your main kitchen? We had designed the kitchen in the casita to do this, so we weren't hauling hundreds of pounds of produce through the house. But this runs afoul of your new rules. All kitchens are not created equal. Is an outdoor barbecue a kitchen? You seem to want to force us to do all our food processing in our main house, just because we might rent our casita out someday. Does that really seem fair to you? Wouldn't it be better to just tell us we can't rent our casita rather than tell us we can't build it the way that works best for us? And to our next offense, we put a bedroom in the casita. When we travel, we need someone to tend the farm and the livestock, and the casita bedroom is centrally well situated. You can see directly to the barn from the bedroom and are only 75 feet away, which is also helpful some nights if we're up all night with a sick animal, and we do occasionally have guests. But Lori and your new rules say we can't have any of this because we might rent the casita out someday. Do you understand how you impact our farm operation plans? Hauling hundreds of pounds of crops through the kitchen, sleeping occasionally in our RV parked where the casita would have been, sticking our guests in a tiny RV, tracking mud through the main house, all because you are concerned that we might someday rent that casita out. Let me be clear, this is not fair to us. I'm asking two things. First, obviously, I want our building permits approved. Secondly, I think you need to get a better handle on your short-term rental problems and quit trying to fix it through building restrictions. To me, it makes no sense to manage farmland design because you are worried about short-term rentals. Address that problem head on. Use quotas, higher fees, greater restrictions, anything really. I'm not interested in how you fix it. I only want you to back off your building restrictions because we are currently collateral damage. I hope our case broadens your perspective. Please let us build our farm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Blair?
Mayor, councilors, I'm Janet Blair of the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Commission, and with me tonight is Ellen Robb, my fellow commissioner. We are here to encourage you to continue pressing DOT for lighted crossings and painted crosswalks. We were delighted to hear what Administrator Curry had to say about your meeting with DOT. We think that is wonderful. This kind of an effort is crucial for the safety of equestrians, pedestrians, and bicyclists in the village who cross Corrales Road on a regular basis. There is increasing traffic on our new road, and it's bringing in motorists who don't know that the law gives horses the right of way to crossing that road. Lots of us are honked at on a regular basis when we attempt to make it across going into the trails in the bosque. That's dangerous. The lighted crossing signs and at least painted crosswalks are very important for public safety. We urge you to make these crosswalks and the lighted crossings a priority with DOT. Thank you very much for your efforts on this. We hope you continue. We hope we can get them done by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Flora?
Yes, I would hopefully the village council would allow me just a little extra time, as last Tuesday I walked out of the mediation meeting, walked down to my car and had a heart attack because of the stress they put me through. Here's a report from my doctor stating the stress I've been through caused this heart attack. What I want to bring to your attention is this is the letter that Lori sent to the village attorney trying to have him supersede an ordinance, overriding an ordinance that we were fighting for. This is the village attorney's opinion letter that states that we do qualify as an intermediate subdivision. This is the falsified document that the village administrator, Sue Ann Durr, wrote stating we do not qualify as an intermediate subdivision. This is a resignation request, IPA request for Candace Cordova's resignation letter. This is the false resignation letter they sent us. This is her true resignation letter we requested. We did not request a email that was forwarded to other people. This is our appeal on the decision of the false letter that we received. We appealed Sue Ann Durr's letter stating that we don't qualify as an intermediate subdivision. We should have been given an appeal hearing on this. We paid for an appeal hearing. What happened to our money? It was extorted by the village. This is September 19th meeting. This is a summary report that was for that meeting. An opinion, the attorney opinion that their property does not qualify to use gross acre and the standard that net acre standard applies for this subdivision. We won that battle, even though that we're being told we haven't won. We won that battle with no dedications to the property. We are being forced a dedication on our property. Our deed was held out of the packet. Our deed was given to the council or to the commission and was held out by Lori Stout. You can hear on the tape, Sue Ann Durr telling Lori Stout, "I told you so." As soon as that a deed appeared out of nowhere to the commissioners that day. Let's see. Right here. Right here, it was given to us tonight, the deed. Now that deed has everything to do with the property. That deed has a 20-foot easement that should have been grandfathered in, okay? Petitions that were kept out of the council packet. 129 signatures, petitions fighting net versus gross. This is, it says right here, we were in the preliminary plat stage of fighting this. It states right here, unless otherwise indicated in the subdivision regulations that there will be a resubmittal. Well, in the subdivision regulations under 1886 and 1887 and resolution 16-006, it states that we have 3 times to fix the problem before there's a resubmittal. How many people are having to resubmit and be charged resubmittal fees illegally?
I'm going to give you one more minute, Mr. Flora, okay? Thank you.
Okay. This is Commissioner Suina. His, in the meeting, we were approved with a 20-foot road. He states it 3 times in this meeting, approved with a 20-foot road easement. 5 commissioners approved that, okay? 5-2 approved it with a 20-foot road. That was kept out. I can go on. There's I believe it's a private lane. It's 20 foot, only to guests, all this. So we don't have to extend the 20 foot to 30 feet, he states in his argument here. So they forced an easement. An easement is granted by the property owner, not the village. If the village wants to eminent domain the property, they can. They don't want to take over responsibility and maintenance on the road. They don't want to do anything on the road, but they want to take property from us. That's a taking issue under eminent domain, 14th and 5th Amendment. Okay, a condition right here. The conditions in this meeting was, the condition of approval was that the village work with the MRGCD on the ditch crossing at Andrews Lane and its stability for heavy vehicles. I will attempt to get this worked out, Lori says in this email. Well, she never did anything. She came back and sends us an email that the village expects a 30-foot road. Okay, all this is corruption, and it all boils down to Lori. Okay, she's causing more problems in this village than you can imagine. We're not going to stop our fight. We're going to expose the corruption that she's caused, and Sue Ender and everything else. And for the village to insult us with an offer, we're not going to go for. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on now. Yes, I'm sorry.
I have two letters that I'd like to read for the parliament.
Of course.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome.
The first letter is going to be from Deborah Troller, Roma Ariano, and Patricia Mazzolini. Apologies if I butchered any of those. Dear village councilors, over the years, the character of the village has changed in many ways. There has been a lot of development. Fields have given way to houses, and the houses people build are much bigger. This phenomenon is not unique to Corrales. Wherever you grew up, it's pretty doubtful that it looks or feels the same as it did when you lived there as a kid. That said, just because change is inevitable doesn't mean that there shouldn't be limits on development or attention to how development impacts the quality of life at the community level. The character of a village is more than the sum of its buildings, fields, and open spaces, and is hardly preserved by limiting the number of families or houses allowed per acre. An important part of what has made Corrales a lovely place for us has been the people we have come to know over the years living here. Some were folks who grew up in Corrales, others came from elsewhere. Teachers, librarians, parents at Corrales Elementary, growers, artists, physicians, lawyers, merchants, lots of different people from different backgrounds. There are many things we enjoy and appreciate about living in Corrales, but the growing exclusiveness is not one of them. It concerns us that increased property values have limited the income diversity of the people who can afford to buy in Corrales. And we are dismayed to see that once again, the false issue of character preservation is being weaponized in a way that will further limit who gets to live in Corrales. What will be preserved will not be the rural character, but rather the monoculturing of what has been a diverse and interesting place to live. The issue of casitas and short-term rentals seems to be pitting people of greater affluence against people who are trying to find creative and affordable solutions to care for family members or simply generate income in increasingly difficult financial times. What is fair and what is reasonable? Rather than hearkening to the good old days before outsiders, a constantly redefined term that never seems to be including the in crowd, showed up and ruined our rural paradise, we can acknowledge the Corrales we actually live in today and try to take a creative and collaborative approach to addressing the challenges development poses. We believe there are ways in setting reasonable limits without simply saying no to villagers' desires to live in multi-generational compounds or utilize their properties to generate income. We appreciate and respect that you have been grappling with these issues for a long time. We don't have all the answers, but we do have a few ideas to share. Above all, we call the Village Council and our fellow neighbors to join in an endeavor that is collaborative, creative, and visionary. Being visionary requires cutting past emotions and personal anecdotes. It requires data to parse out the underlying issues. Yes, the council needs to listen to what residents are saying and how people feel, but please let information and not emotion drive policy. Too often in Corrales, government, the loudest and the angriest have impeded implementation of policies or projects that would have served a greater good to the community. In that spirit, we offer the following ideas. We call for a vision which recognizes the village is not static, is not a pastoral Disney theme park. That vision should seek to harness the best change for our village. Require that licensing of short-term rentals be limited to partial year, 90 or 120 total days or some other amount. This would allow local homeowners to rent out their homes or guest houses part of the year, but make it unprofitable for speculators or outside investors to buy properties simply as vacation rentals. Require that STRs demonstrate that they are addressing environmental concerns. For example, require that they pump their septic tanks with regularity or have inspections. That could be part of annual licensing. Lay the issues out more clearly, not the emotional ones, but the underlying issues, and properly and professionally survey the community. The Survey Monkey may have been a sincere attempt, but it was not truly open to all since it relied being in the know of what was even happening. Voluntary and worse yet, word of mouth surveys are self-selective and produce poor data. Modernize the communication between the council and the residents by starting an online campaign to collect email addresses or utilize some other social media platform so we can receive e-notifications of important events such as village council votes that impact us, elections, etc. Be sincerely vigilant about licensing all home-based businesses. This is good for the village, and no one should be running any type of business without contributing to the tax base of our community. It is not fair to call out one kind of business and turn a blind eye for others. We sincerely thank you for your time and attention. The second letter is a letter from Derek Larson, and it reads, "Thank you, councilors, for indulging my interest regarding the numerous half-acre lots that were platted before the village passed the ordinance limiting new residential construction to 1 acre or larger lots. There have been many instances of subdivisions platted with half-acre lots in which houses have been built on many or most of the lots, but with few lots remaining where houses were not built before the 1 acre minimum ordinance was passed. Are these pre-ordinance platted lots grandfathered such that homes may still be built on them? Certainly there is a legitimate concern regarding possible groundwater contamination resulting from the higher number of density of conventional primary septic systems utilized in the village. But note that installation of advanced aerobic septic systems provides secondary and tertiary treatment can mitigate the groundwater contamination concern. Mention has been made at prior meetings of some efforts or study being undertaken to address this issue and the potential to allow development of some half-acre lots under the auspices of revised ordinance. Is the council able to elaborate or provide any details on such an undertaking and give any sort of timetable? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that concludes the Coriolanus Forum. Is there someone else that I missed? No. You did not sign up, correct? You're not on my list.
I signed up at the door and I thought I could speak.
What's your name?
My name is Joe Allowable, A-B-E-L-E.
What item did you sign up for?
I just filled out the form at the door. So
Is there somebody outside the door?
Yeah, you must have missed the second
I
one.
didn't realize I was.
That's okay. Come on up. We have some
Thanks.
interesting procedures right now.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, sir.
Members of council, Madam Mayor, my name is Joe Allowable and I reside at 136 Reclining Acres Road. I'm speaking before you this evening to urge council to pass an ordinance allowing development on existing half-acre lots with advanced treatment systems. I reside on a half-acre lot and I abut another half-acre lot which previously had a home which cannot be replaced due to the existing ordinance. I also understand that a home on a half-acre lot was allowed to be constructed by way of a variance fairly recently. Please act to draft an ordinance or revise the existing ordinance to allow development on half-acre lots with advanced treatment systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I think that does conclude the Coriolanus Forum. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council and be enacted by one motion. Would you shut the door, please? Thank you. Will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, then that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Thank you so much, Lieutenant. All right, the one item on here is the approval of minutes for the June 15, 2021 regular council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes from the June 15th meeting.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'm going to do a voice vote. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Duquette, I know you were not here.
I was
so
not.
you
I watched the
probably didn't
video,
see
so
it.
I don't know if that counts. but
All right, probably does, but We're going to consider the minutes approved. So we're now going to move on to the first item in new business, which is the hearing of an appeal for the short-term rental 2105. And this relates entirely and only to the permit at 618 Reclining Acres Road. So that is what we are going to be looking at. If there were materials that were submitted that were not pertinent to 618 Reclining Acres Road, and that's what we're looking at tonight. My name is Joanne Roque. I'm the mayor, and I will be functioning as the presiding officer of this hearing. This is quasi-judicial, and the decisions will be made by the members of the governing body. So for purposes of this, I'm going to conduct another roll call. Tyson Parker.
Here.
Kevin Lucero.
Here.
Mel Knight. Here. Zachary Burkett.
Here.
Stuart Murray.
Here.
And Bill Woldman is absent tonight. So now I'm going to ask the appellant to please identify yourself. Mr. Nelson Eckerman. Thank you. The appellee, Ms. Janine Grayson. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, my name is Ron Holmes. I'm an attorney and I'm representing here on behalf of Ginny Grayson as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the scope of this appeal will be limited to the application for a short-term rental permit at 618 Reclining Acres Road and the subsequent approval of that permit by planning and zoning. If people go outside of that scope, I am going to call you on it, and I will say that it is irrelevant. That goes for both parties as well as counselors, unless it really is related to the appellant and the denial. We are recording this meeting tonight so that a complete, clear record can be created of everything said. However, please remember that we cannot create an accurate record if people start talking over each other. So I'm going to be strict about that as well. If people start talking over you, I will stop you and ask that you stop so we can get a clean record. The council will have the opportunity to ask questions. Council, if you have any questions, would you please say mayor so that I can make sure that I see you, recognize, and let you speak. Again, that is really for the accuracy of the record so that we can get those questions and answers down. The question should be focused on clarifying the record or the testimony given and should not include new information or evidence being offered by a counselor through asking a question. I'm also going to assume that everyone's demeanor is going to be appropriate and there will not be any badgering or argumentation of witnesses. I'm going to call people on that. Witnesses and evidence. Evidence in this hearing is made up of everything in the record from the planning department and what is introduced for the first time here tonight. Evidence includes testimony and exhibits. If either party has exhibits to present that are not in the packet, please give them to Aaron so that they can be presented to council. Now, here's the general outline of how we're going to run the hearing. We're going to first have a background statement by Planning and Zoning Administrator Lori Stout, just to give the governing body an outline of the case consisting of a review of the application and the P&Z Commission's approval of the permit. Each party's time will be limited to 20 minutes. The appellant may request more time if it's extremely complicated and if the governing body agrees. Do you feel you're going to need more than 20 minutes? I think so.
I don't expect to, but I would like to reserve it. I needed an extra 5 minutes at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The appellant may present argument or call witnesses, and any of their witnesses will be sworn in by the village clerk. The appellant can only rely on the record of the exhibits and witnesses from the P&Z hearing or introduce new exhibits or call new witnesses. If there are exhibits, again, these should be given to Aaron. You're going to need to explain what the exhibit is. If they're related to the case, they're going to be made part of the record by an act of myself, unless an objection to the evidence is raised by a counselor. At the conclusion of the appellant's case, we're going to move on to the appellee. At the conclusion of your case, if the appellant has reserved any time, they may then use it as final rebuttal. After both cases and the final rebuttal, counselors or I may have questions of the witnesses limited to clarifying the evidence, the parties' arguments, or the decision of the P&Z. No independent evidence should be offered by counselors or and I will remind us and myself if necessary. After questions, I will close the hearing and the governing body will deliberate, and the village council may make a determination in open session or decide to deliberate in closed session as allowed by the Open Meetings Act. All decisions must be made in public. The governing body may grant the appeal and reverse the P and Z decision. They may deny the appeal and affirm the decision by the P and Z. They may modify the decision with new findings or remand the case back to P and Z if the record before the governing body is not sufficient to ensure its decision will be in compliance with village or other governing law. Once a decision is made, then there will be a direction to our attorney to prepare a written decision and findings of fact and conclusions of law supporting the governing body's decision based on the facts established in the record. The hearing date shall be set at that time for a vote on the form of decision as soon as practicable. After the approval and the final decision, the appeal will be concluded. Are there any questions about the process?
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray. Quick question.
Sir?
Is the entirety of the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes all suitable for questions?
Counselor, I would assume that is only as it relates to the decision made on the permit at 618 Reclining Acres Road, but I will allow our counsel to respond.
Mayor and councilors, is this working now? Well, I'm just talk loud because that doesn't seem to be working. So when we looked at this, there is a lot of extraneous information that is in the packet submitted by multiple parties. Then the matter that is before the council tonight. We should focus all of our questions and all of our decision-making upon the application that's before you. That is the only application that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the other matters that were introduced into the record were done so for no apparent reason related to the record. So we need to focus on this application, this address, and this process.
Mayor, if I may inject, Mr. Audio, the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission contain information of 3 other home occupations by the person, the resident at 593 Reclining Acres. There was also another short-term application there too. They're all related. I'm just curious, would we entertain questions that might be related to the leading up to the final application of 618 Reclining Acres?
I think we should hold off, see what the appellant, what the focus of their case is, and then the applicant and the appellee, and see where they're going with this, and if that becomes an issue. We can go down a ton of rabbit holes here that really don't have anything to do with the merits of the case, and we really need to focus on that so we have a clean record in case one of these parties brings this up to court after our hearing. That's the goal, is to have a clean record on this decision only. The fact that she has other properties, unless one of the parties can show why it's relevant, shouldn't be relevant to us.
I'll ask a question if I need clarification of where I'm going to go with this.
Well, when we let them go
Right.
first, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So please, can we start with the background planning statement, Administrator Stout?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'm losing my voice already, so apologies. On May 19th, 2021, the Village of Krause Planning and Zoning Commission approved a 2-bedroom short-term rental with a maximum occupancy of 3 people at 618 Reclining Acres. That's actually slightly stricter than what our ordinances allow, but what that boils down to is the applicant stated she will have up to 1 occupant in one of the bedrooms and up to 2 occupants in the other bedroom, so 2 total bedrooms. I will say there were some home occupations that were brought before the commission that night. They were not approved at that location. So the only business activity approved at that location was a 2-bedroom residential short-term rental at 618 Reclining Acres.
Thank you. Would the appellant like to?
Madam Mayor, I understand that I'm a little out of order, but may I address the council?
No.
It is a preliminary matter, and the matter is that we believe that the appeal is actually untimely. If the council would like me to address that, I'd like to address that as a preliminary matter, because if it is untimely, then it really ought not to go forward.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. As Ms. Stout just reported to you, this decision was made on May 19th, excuse me. Ms. Grayson, who is the appellee, received notice from the village clerk that an appeal was made on June 7th. Section 18-45G subsection 6 of the village code says that a timely appeal must be filed within 10 days of the decision. The decision was entered on May 19th or rendered on May 19th. That June 7th, if that is the day, which I believe that it is, it seems to be where the record points to, then the June 7th date is untimely for the appeal, and this appeal really ought not to have any jurisdiction before the governing body. And I think as a preliminary matter, we need to have a ruling on that one before we really ought to spend any more time on it.
Understood. Can we have a verification of what date you did receive the appeal?
Yes.
Clerk Euland?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody got a calendar?
Well, I do.
Sure we all do.
Can you tell me which section of the code you referenced again?
Yes, it is section 18-45, G as in go, subsection 6. And also for the record, the letter dated from the village dated June 28th, 2021 says, the letter is to notice you that June 7, 2021, the approval of your short term was appealed by Mr. Ackerman. I'm paraphrasing slightly.
And just refresh my memory, are those days calendar or business?
The statute is unclear, but even if it were business days, it's still more than 10 business days.
Okay, thank you.
So we did receive the appeal on June 7th. I think the root of the issue is that, pulling up, is section G of section 6.
Madam Mayor, I have a copy of it if you wish
Thank you.
to see it.
Thank you. No, that's
So Madam Mayor, it does seem that in subsection 6, it lists 10 days. We typically follow section 1849, which stipulates 20 days. I was unaware that there was a difference in appeal. I thought all appeals for the greater subsection of permits
and what does
fell under a requirement.
What does 1849 say, Aaron? Would you mind reading that up? Because this one definitely says an applicant who's aggrieved by the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
This one, so this is section 1849, subsection B. Application. Any appeal following the decision of the administrator or Planning and Zoning Commission shall be made in writing to the governing body, together with the payment of an applicable filing fee. Any appeal not submitted within 20 days after the decision, which is the subject of the appeal, shall not be considered by the governing body. The day of the determination is not included in the 20-day period for filing for appeal. And if the 20th day falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or national holiday, next working day is considered as the deadline for the filing of the appeal.
Thank you. Hello, Counselor. We seem to have a conflict.
You also have it in 1891.
So, Mayor, councilors, I think we should hear from the appellant themselves on this and hear their position. This is a unique provision compared to our normal appeal provision. However, it does specifically say all appeals from an aggrieved party from the Planning and Zoning Commission may appeal to the decision of the governing body within 10 days. So we do have the lawyer for the appellee correctly stated what that section states. So let's listen to the appellee and then we need to discuss this more.
Okay, all right. So, yes, the appellant, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Nelson Ackerman. Thank you for your time. I contacted the village clerk and was told I had 20 days to file the appeal. I did file the appeal within the 20 days. I do have a legitimate concern, and it would be very much appreciated if you would take the time and find in my favor. I believe that this process should go forward. It's only the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting because normally if you know, it's usually a bright line, but we do have two different statutes and we clearly did say 20 days. And I'm not sure that considering that there's the two different statutes that we could really say no to this appeal.
Lori, could you come up? At the hearings on this matter, we've had appeals on this before. Has this issue come up of the disparity between section 49 and 45?
No, I don't believe we've had an appeal of a short-term rental yet. So this is the first time.
Were we applying the 10-day rule to any parties previously?
No, because it would have been specifically to a short-term rental appeal. It's in that section apparently.
Right, but I mean, on other appeals, have we used the 20-day period previously?
Yes.
So I think we have an issue here, Mayor, that we were improperly applying our code in the past because our normal time limit is the 20 days. This created a different time limit that the clerk and staff, we haven't really been working with. Is that accurate? We haven't been working with the 10 days.
Correct. It hasn't come up till now.
So, I mean, I think we ought to hear this record. The appellee has preserved the issue. I think we should hear the arguments on the merits, and then that will have to be part of our decision whether we go with the plain language of the ordinance, or our practice has certainly influenced the appellant in this matter, and that will be messy for a court to look at. So let's hear the case.
I agree. I'm gonna rule in favor of the appellant. We're gonna move forward with that. Certainly. All right, it is now, you are welcome to come forward and give your presentation.
And Madam Mayor, I did have the appellant submit some additional information. Is now the appropriate time to dish it out?
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like me to explain that?
Yes, please go ahead and give your
Or do you want me
presentation
to
about
start this, or do you
what
want me
you're
to
about. I address the entire body and I would suggest that you do an overview so that everybody here really understands the
Okay.
crux of your complaint.
Is this on? I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The email chain that I provided you will actually come up in my presentation.
Certainly.
It's an email chain between Ms. Stout and one of the neighbors.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ackerman, I got to swear you in since the quasi-judicial setting. Would you raise your right arm? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to begin by thanking you, Madam Mayor, and the village councilors for taking the time to hear my concerns of the neighbor.
Could you speak up a little bit? I think the microphone's having a hard time picking you up.
How about now? Is that better? I'd like to begin by thanking
There you are.
I'd like to begin by thanking you, Madam Mayor, and the village councilors for taking the time to hear my concerns of the neighbors, of not only mine, but the neighbors on Reclining Acres Road in regards to the short-term rental at 618 Reclining Acres Road. I'm here before you on behalf of myself as well as most of the residents on Reclining Acres Road. Proof of this is in the signatures on the petition presented in your packets. I would also like to bring to your attention some procedural errors during the Planning and Zoning meeting, May 19th of 2021, where this short-term rental was approved. At the beginning of the meeting on 5/19, a public message, probably intended to be private, was sent by Commissioner Morris on the public board. It read, "What are you doing here?" I'm not sure, but I am of the belief that it was directed at Mr. Holmes, who happened to be Ms. Grayson's attorney. No reply or additional messages were sent. This actually gives the impression that the conversation was moved to an offline format in order to be private. If that is the case, it could be easily interpreted as ex parte communication, a clear concern. The reason this is relevant is that Commissioner Morris and Mr. Holmes had a prior working relationship. Mr. Holmes disclosed this at the beginning of his presentation. Little, if anything, was said by Commissioner Morris or any of the other commissioners. It seems reasonable that with this prior relationship, Commissioner Morris should probably have recused herself from voting on this matter. We had already witnessed a recusal earlier in the meeting by Commissioner Sturmer in regards to a different short-term rental permit where he had stayed prior to purchasing his home. The short-term rental permit application on the agenda for May 19th. Unfortunately, Ms. Grayson, her renter, Mr. Dickerson, and her attorney, Mr. Holmes, quickly changed the narrative to attacking me and anyone else who objected to this point. You'll see that in your minutes. Mr. McCandless allowed this to go on for several minutes, along with Mr. Holmes telling stories about a car he bought. Mr. Dickerson told stories about how I should use a broom and a dustpan to clean the leaves in my yard. He also said that I was a liar and that I should not even be allowed to speak. Former Planning and Zoning Commissioner Mike Source interrupted, asking the chairman why he was allowing the name calling, and cited that the point of order should be restored. Chairman McCandless asked Mr. Source if he had anything further to add about the topic being discussed. Mr. Source responded, "Nothing that hasn't already been brought up." Somewhere around this time, Chairman McCandless instructed Aaron Galeen to mute Mr. Source. Chairman McCandless then allowed the slander and insults by Mr. Holmes to continue. This can all be heard on the recordings of the meeting. None of the slanderous comments had anything to do with the permit application being discussed at this meeting. Another conflict of interest became evident from Planning and Zoning Administrator Lori Stout. With the comments in her initial statement to the Planning and Zoning Commissioners for the May 19th meeting, Ms. Stout says, "A neighbor has stirred up the street," implying me. There is no factual bearing to that statement. Ms. Stout also revealed to me in our only in-person conversation back in March that she had on occasion also rented rooms in her home as short-term rentals to people in the movie and TV industry. Perhaps another reason Ms. Stout should possibly not be making recommendations on this subject. I made several attempts to have in-person meetings with Ms. Stout, only to be told that she was busy with other meetings, but would try to sneak in a call. She did call me back. However, it is my understanding that she was able to meet with Ms. Grayson in person on multiple occasions. At the May 19th Planning and Zoning meeting, Ms. Grayson received approval for the short-term rental at 618 Reclining Acres. Ms. Grayson was asked if she knew of any additional non-compliances or violations at the 618 Reclining Acres property. Ms. Grayson replied no. Chairman McCandless informed Ms. Grayson that if we find out there are any additional violations, your short-term rental permit will be revoked. My wife and I went to the Corrales Growers Market a few weeks ago, where we noticed that Ms. Fiore, who is her long-term renter and co-manager, was selling mushrooms, herbs, teas, and additional items. She had a banner hanging showing that her company, Mushroom Love, was a Corrales-based business. This can be seen in the pictures on page 9 of the packet that I provided you. My wife sent an email to Ms. Stout inquiring about the business license. Ms. Stout responded that Ms. Fiore had no such business license and that Ms. Stout would be contacting her. Also on page 8 and 9 of the packet that I provided. Ms. Fiore's friend that she shares the booth with at the growers market confirmed that Ms. Fiore was growing mushrooms and making her saleable items at her residence in Corrales. Ms. Grayson's tenant is and has been operating a home business at 618 Reclining Acres without a permit, clearly a violation of village code. Ms. Grayson and Ms. Fiore have also stated in this submittal and in the testimony at May 19th meeting that Ms. Fiore is an employee and co-host of her rental business. It does not appear that Ms. Grayson has an employee account set up with the state. If Ms. Fiore is operating as an independent contractor and receiving a 1099, she would also need a state number, a permit for that business at that location, and a business license, none of which I believe she has, unless it's new. During Ms. Grayson's first application for short-term rental was actually for the 593 home on March 17th. Chairman McCandless brought to light that Ms. Grayson was operating multiple businesses as well as the short-term rentals that we are discussing this evening. He checked the Airbnb and VRBO sites to find that between the two homes and the converted garage studio, her capacity could be in the area of 19 renters. He also noted that none of these businesses have ever been permitted. This seemed at the time to be of great concern to the commissioners. The commissioners ultimately denied that short-term rental permit due to septic concerns.
That is not before us this evening.
I'm sorry,
That is not before us this evening. Then we are focusing on the permit for 618.
I'll move on to the next assessment. At the close of the meeting, the commission requested that Ms. Grayson get all of her short-term rentals and all of her home occupancies put together and be presented at once. Toward the end of this meeting, Ms. Grayson was directed to stop all short-term rentals in addition to stopping all rentals of the garage studio, since that was an illegal residence. Ms. Grayson was told that she needed to remove all online rental advertising. Commissioner Killebrew asked Ms. Grayson if she understood this requirement. Ms. Grayson replied, yes. On page 36 of my submittal, I have provided a screenshot dated May 13th of 21, where Ms. Grayson merely moved her rental advertising to her life coaching website. Ms. Grayson highlights her vacation rentals in bold print with an additional paragraph asking people to call her directly for information on how to reserve a stay with her at either of her two locations. This is a violation and is a blatant disregard to the commissioner's request. Those were all requirements for the following permit. That's why I bring them up. Ms. Grayson continued renting rooms at both of her 618 and 593 and Reclining Acres, as well as the garage studio. Ms. Stout and Ms. Rice, the code enforcement officer, were notified via email by Ms. Benavides, which is the email chain that I provided you. That's what it's pertinent to. Ms. Benavides lives next door to the west. And this was presented on March 22nd, this email, excuse me. She was informing them that the rentals at both the rental houses as well as the garage studio were continuing. The email responses I provided you from Ms. Stout was basically that she was allowing this and that there was nothing that could be done by the village, even though the commission had requested her to cease all rentals. I too called Planning and Zoning Administrator Ms. Stout on 3/25, a full week after the rentals were to cease. I was unable to speak directly to her, but left a message asking what was going on. The following day, March 26th, I received an email from Ms. Hall, the permit planning coordinator. She informed me that Ms. Grayson and Ms. Stout had a meeting planned for that morning to discuss Ms. Grayson's applications. Next in Ms. Hall's email, she told me that Ms. Grayson had informed the administrator that there was a couple as well as another single person that would be staying a few more nights. Once again, not allowed to do so. Another example of disregard for what Ms. Grayson was instructed to do: stop renting and stop advertising. It is also stated that we, Ms. Stout and Ms. Hall, we're going to allow Ms. Grayson to go forward with those pre-booked reservations, since apparently there were very few. You can see page 3 of the email. Again, not what the P&Z Commission had instructed. Also in the email was that Ms. Grayson was to provide in writing what days and how many people were included in said rentals. Was the list provided in writing? Does it really matter? Ms. Grayson wasn't supposed to be renting at all. The email was also stated that if we find there to be more than the few rentals Ms. Grayson implied, we would go forward with handling that appropriately. Again, what is appropriate? The rentals at both houses never stopped, even to this day. Not only did Ms. Grayson continue her rentals after the commission directed her to stop, Ms. Grayson rented all during the governor mandated short-term rental shutdown imposed in April of 2020. Multiple out-of-state vehicles came and went throughout the year. This is also noted in some of the submittal letters from neighbors included in your package. Ms. Grayson was allowed to continue her rentals even after the activity was brought to the attention of Ms. Stout multiple times. Why was Ms. Grayson not cited by code enforcement for this? Perhaps if a citation were given, this non-compliant behavior would have been stopped. This kind of non-enforcement has only emboldened Ms. Grayson to continue operating in this disrespectful manner with no regard to any rules or regulations as shown in her behavior during the past several years. Multiple VRBO reviews from out-of-state renters dated during the governor mandated short-term rental shutdown were provided by Ms. Grayson herself and are submitted in the council package. From 2016, when Ms. Grayson purchased the property at 618 Reclining Acres, Ms. Grayson has rented all 3 bedrooms in the main home, an additional 3, and also either lived or rented the converted garage studio. For an additional 3 bedrooms in that unit. There's actually 2 bedrooms and a closet that was converted with a bed in the studio.
Is this 618?
At 618, yes, ma'am. That would make this a 6-bedroom property that's been ongoing for the better part of 5 years on a 3-bedroom septic tank. The septic system is permitted only for 3-bedroom home. With the way the septic system has been abused and overworked for at least the last 5 years, it is important that the septic system be evaluated to prevent groundwater contamination. From the submittal documents provided by Ms. Grayson, the septic tank at that property appears to be the original tank. I don't see on the submitted drawings that the garage studio is even connected to the septic tank. If it is, it makes it 6 bedrooms. If it's not, where is that sewage going? In May of 12, Ms. Grayson had an evaluation on the tank at 593. The actual evaluation noted the tank was leaking and falling apart from Atlas Pumping, I believe was their company. New Mexico Environment Department review cited that a tank replacement was required at that time. Interestingly enough, those pages were left out of the original planning and zoning request for short-term rentals. In March of 2021, Ms. Grayson did do a drain field modification, not a replacement, just an addition, to increase the size of that home from 3 to 4 bedrooms. New Mexico Environment Department did not have a permit for a new tank after the 2012 date. Those are submitted on pages 100 through 118 of the packet, again, that I provided. If this is any indication of Ms. Grayson's ethics and how she maintains the property she owns, I would be highly concerned with the septic tank at 618 Reclining Acres. This could very well be a community health risk. I hope you've had the time to review the numerous concerns from the residents and what we as neighbors have had to endure for the last several years. I would like to highlight a few of the concerns from the residential letters as well as other concerns. Number 1, there is no fire suppression along Reclining Acres Road, and the amount of dead trees and brush at 618 is problematic. Another male renter at 618 was observed urinating in the yard just outside the neighbor's front door, as noted in one of the letters. traffic and non-compliance of the speed limit is still a problem. Not just her renters, everybody. Okay, it's a 15-mile zone and it's really slow. Mr. Ackerman, I just want to let you know you have about 5 minutes left. Okay, I'm almost done. Thank you. Groundwater contamination is a real possibility. Safety concerns, renters coming and going. We never know who belongs and who doesn't due to this revolving door. Invasion of privacy, including drone flyovers from Ms. Grayson's renters. There was a large party. It was noted before. Underage alcohol. Ms. Grayson didn't even know about it until 3 a.m. when somebody else called the police. Let me skip some of that. Just because permits can be issued doesn't mean they should be. Many cities, towns, and villages across the state and even the country have adopted strict guidelines in regards to short-term rentals because of the problems they haven't heard. Going so far as to limit how many can be owned by the same person. Santa Fe allows 1. How close together they can be. Some no more than less than 50 feet apart. And even some as to how many days, if you rent it one time in a 7-day period, even if it's 1 day, that's your only renter. Okay. In conclusion, I would ask that the council revoke the permit at 618 Reclining Acres due to the multiple violations presented here, as well as for the concerns about the possible groundwater contamination due to an overworked and uninspected septic system. I would also request that the council consider placing a moratorium on approving short-term rentals until the village has time to implement policy and procedures for these short-term rental reviews, as well as a review of the enforcement portion so that owners of short-term rentals will comply with village codes so neighbors don't have to police neighbors. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to save the last few minutes of my time for later rebuttal.
Certainly, Mr.
Thank you very much. I tried not to get too much in the weeds.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight. If I heard Ms. Stout correctly when she was asked questions from council, I believe she stated that this was the only short-term rental that has been appealed. I can tell you that I believe also that this is without a doubt the only short-term rental that Mr. Ackerman has appealed. Yet Mr. Ackerman has taken upon himself to post many signs around the village of Corrales saying no short-term rentals, Corrales no short-term rentals on Reclining Acres and so forth. Unfortunately, it's become quite personal. Mr. Ackerman has taken this against Ms. Grayson to attempt to make the short-term rentals be at least disallowed on Reclining Acres, but has yet to do anything really to change the law. And that's what this council needs to decide is what is the law? Did Ms. Grayson properly apply for the permit? Was the permit in compliance? Was she in compliance? An application that is filed with the P&Z is not scheduled for a hearing until it is complete. Ms. Stout determined that the application was in fact complete. It was sent for a hearing, and Ms. Grayson prevailed on that after presenting her entire case, which he will do again tonight. But let me just do the highlights here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
No need to apologize. I'm sorry about that.
Somehow I must have said, "Hey Siri" or something, I guess.
Right, and it started to answer you.
I'll try to refrain from using that phrase.
Okay, sorry about that.
Ms. Grayson has shown the maximum number of occupants are allowed per the number, and she's done the proper number of parking spaces, the septic tank, the trash receptacles, all of those are in compliance. The Google map was submitted, flooring plan submitted, off-street parking was sufficient for the application, the valid septic tank permit. Mr. Ackerman is taking a fair amount of speculation as to this septic tank is going to fail basically yesterday as opposed and as an immediate problem, but there's nothing that supports that. Ms. Grayson has provided the contact information to the P&Z, paid the filing fee, and she does have a CRS ID assigned to her for this short-term rental. She also was in compliance with, after the short-term rental application was approved, she also got the business license from the village to conduct that short-term rental. I would like to turn my time over to Ms. Grayson, and I will have a few minutes, I believe, for rebuttal as well. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, Ms. Grayson?
Madam Mayor and Council, thank you very much. Yes.
You need to swear.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so there are several things that I would like to just clear up. As far as 618 goes, the converted garage had 1 bedroom, not 3. And yes, I lived there at a time. And yes, I had rented it for 1 bedroom, not for 2 bedrooms. Then during COVID, yes, I rented the upstairs out and the casita. And most of those people, I would say, stayed for at least a month, if not longer. Okay, I provided a place for people that they knew that if they didn't have a place to work, if they had to work at home, it didn't have to be their home, it could be some other place. So I had people that came in and rented for at least a month. Some of them were there for 2 months or longer. What else do I want to say? The traffic, if anything, and yes, I did close down the casita as soon as that meeting in March or May was held. I closed it down. Lori came and looked at it so that she could see that it was closed down, that there was no bedroom furniture, there was no kitchen appliances. And so that was closed down. And as far as my website having my Corrales Suite lodging on there, I still am advertising for long-term rentals. And in fact, I have someone that is coming in the middle of October and has rented the upstairs of this house until April 1st. And that was through VRBO. So I am still advertising these. No, I'm not advertising them as short-term rentals. I'm advertising them as long-term. So yes, they're still on there. You can still find them, but that's what it's for, was for the long-term until I was approved for short-term rental. Yes, I did go to Lori after they said no more short-term rentals. And I said, I have a couple of people that have rented for a short term. Do I need to cancel them? And we discussed it. And she said, if they were already on the books, Janine, keep them on there. And I said, okay. So that's what we did. I did talk to him about that. Yes, there was a woman that stayed in the casita. She was there for a month. And Lori had asked me that I needed to move her out, find another place for her as soon as I possibly could. And I did. And so there, I moved her out of the casita as quickly as I could. Because it was a last minute thing. She was coming the next day. And then the other people were coming like 2 days later. So for them to find something in that short of a time would have really been pressing for those people. So that's why we did it the way we did it. As far as traffic goes, because of cutting down the short-term rental and even long-term rental in the casita, that even cut down the amount of traffic that was coming to the house. This house for short-term would be at the most would be 2 cars, and that would be it, other than the long-term rentals that are downstairs, and they have 2 cars. Speed, that is not, and it's just like Mr. Ackerman said, it is not just the people that are renting from me that speed up and down that road. There are people that come down to the end of the road and realize that it is not a thoroughfare. And so therefore they turn around and go back. even though it says at the end of the front of the street that it is not a through access, people still think it is. What else do I want to address? And I'm gonna let, I don't know, do you want to address this about your business, or would you rather me cover it? So anyway, I believe, is there anything I'm leaving out here? You think? I think I'm going to leave from here. I'm going to have whatever I'm going to say. But one thing I did want to clear up in the March meeting, the reason why they did not, or they did not approve my 593 had nothing to do with the septic tank, nothing whatsoever. It had to do with the application not being complete. So that's why it was declined. So I'm going to ask Laura Fiore, who does have a permit for her business, to talk with you just briefly about that out of 618.
And Ms. Fiore, just before you start, would you mind, just give state your name, your affiliation, and then we'll do the swearing in.
My name is Laura Fiore. I live at 618 Reclining Acres Road. I am a co-host for Janine Grayson's short-term rental business.
Great, thank you. And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As I said, I live at 618 Reclining Acres Road. I've lived there for 4 years. One thing I want to point out is that 618 has been a short-term rental for 5 years. And short-term rental permits have only been required by the village since January of 2020, a year and a half ago. So this business was operated legally for 3.5 years before any of this came up. And I think that gives a lot of perspective to what we're talking about today, because it seems like this intense interest this spring could be the result of an outlet of stress that's been experienced by all of us over the last couple of years. We've been home, things have been quiet. We've had nothing to do but look at the neighbors. So I want to point out that 3.5 years have gone by with no problems. So I want to explain about my business, Mushroom Love Farm. I volunteered at the Corrales Growers Market during the pandemic when they needed extra help. And I loved being there, I loved the people, and I thought I could grow mushrooms. Well, I have only been partially successful. At the March market, I did have a small crop and I was very excited. I had a sign made, I had business cards. But the April market, at that time of year, the market is only once per month. I had no mushrooms. As spring weather came and the temperature changed, my production dropped off to nothing. And so I share a booth with my friend Denise. She is nice enough to let me come there and sell her items and hang my sign, but I do not have any sales of mushrooms in the last several months. I have been waiting to regain my crop before I got my permits and everything, but I went ahead and got them anyway. So I have a home occupancy permit, which did not have to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission because I have no one coming to my house. It is purely a growing operation. And I have a business license with the Village of Corrales since yesterday. And so that's what happened. I don't want to take up any time from these other folks other than to say that I was trying to figure out why everybody is so afraid of these people coming down our street. And I find everyone who comes to stay with us delightful. And I think the difference is that to people seeing a car down the street with out-of-state plates, fear comes up because there's a lot of stranger danger going around right now. We know these people's names, addresses, phone numbers, emails. We know the reason they're coming. We know how long they're staying. We know what time they're arriving. And to me, I realized it's just like being in a gated community. We know these people. We know they're coming directly to us. We tell them where to go for lunch. We give them the map from the Corrales comment. These people are delightful people. And the only difference is that I have met them and the people who see them drive past have not. And I don't know who comes and visits my neighbors. You know, it could be Aunt Martha from Wyoming. And it could elicit that feeling. So I think we're just having a big misunderstanding about the nature of what's happening. We are completely in the know about these people, and we would never do anything that would cause any harm to ourselves and our neighbors.
Thank you, Ms. Fiore.
Thank you.
I'll just address a couple more points that I wanted to clear the air a little bit again. Mr. Ackerman was taking saying that I was attacking him during the hearing on the May 19th. It's simply not true. And it's also not relevant. That's not what, it again, is not true. I take offense to that, actually. It's the slanderous comments was what he says. So I'd like to address that. It's not true. And it doesn't go to the merits of what the application is and what it's not. It is in compliance. And whether Ms. Fiore is selling things with or without a permit, that doesn't have anything to do with Ms. Grayson. If Ms. Grayson can't make her compliance, if the P&Z finds her in non-compliant, then it's not on Ms. Grayson, that would be on Ms. Fiore, but clearly she believes that she is in compliance, as she stated to the council. And one of the other things I want to clear up also is that the website may have been active, but Ms. Grayson was not taking any bookings, and because she was told not to, and she was in compliance with the P&Z about that as well. And then the last thing I want to say is Mr. Ackerman's email that he submitted, the email chain that he submits today, all of those emails predate the May 19th hearing, and none of that was brought up at that hearing. This is the first time anybody saw or heard about that today. And it looks like, Mr. Ackerman talks about zone enforcement. If there's a problem with the zone, it's up to the zone enforcement department to do something about it. Mr. Ackerman needs to follow the due process, bring that to the attention of the zone enforcement, and let them do their job. It's not Mr. Ackerman's job. And he wants to basically cast a shadow on Ms. Grayson tonight to basically say that there's some sort of enforcement problem that's out there, which doesn't actually exist. Now, Ms. Grayson, when she first put this application in, she said that I want to do potentially six bodies for the short-term rental. In compliance with what, sort of Ms. Stout was saying, well, that's probably not going to fly. If you downsize this down and put it into compliance, it's got a better chance of success. And that's exactly what she did. She downsized that. She's in compliance. The abuse of the septic tank is just mere speculation. There's nothing to support that. Ms. Grayson discussed the traffic. This traffic has been the same traffic it's been for 5 years. The only time anybody ever noticed it is when there now became a permit requirement, and now it suddenly became a problem. It was never a problem beforehand. And then privacy and safety and so forth, Mr. Ackerman raised that issue. Ms. Fiore lives in this property. Ms. Grayson is in this property. If there was ever going to be a problem or a question about safety, those two would be the most at risk potentially for a safety concern. It just simply doesn't exist. So we would like to, of course, ask the mayor and Madam Mayor and the council members to deny this appeal for multiple reasons. One, that it may in fact be untimely, but also because the merits of the appeal don't satisfy the requirements of due process. Ms. Grayson is in compliance, and we ask the council to affirm the P&Z's ruling. I would be happy to take any questions if the council has any.
We have questions for Mr. Holmes? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Mr. Holmes, to the best of your knowledge, is Ms. Grayson, is she aware that under the lodging ordinance that she is required to get a business license, even though the short-term rentals were not in compliance in 2020?
Yes, the simple answer is yes, and that's why she has it now. I can tell you some of the things that have happened before the licensing and permit and so forth became into play. Some things were done without the formal process of doing it. And then I hear Ms. Stout when we were at the P&Z hearing on the May 19th is like, we're not so focused on the non-compliance in the past. What we're trying to do, and the purpose of putting the business license in and the permits and so forth is to get compliance going forward and make sure that it's more of a forward-looking policy as opposed to punishing a past wrong potentially. So what I can submit to you is that now everything is absolutely in place. The permit has been approved. She has the CRS tax ID number, and she also has the Village of Corrales business license for the short-term rental for 618 because it was approved. And you really can't get the business license until the short-term rental is actually approved. And that's the process.
Well, but I think what it gets back to is that Ms. Fiore made a statement that the 618 Reclining Acres was in compliance for short-term rental prior to the year 2020, in which case, if the applicant did not apply for a lodging license prior to that, she was not in non-compliance. Is that correct?
I can have Ms. Grayson address that particularly because I'm not sure I know that answer to that question directly. But what Ms. Fiore said is that this property has been used for a short-term rental for longer than what the permit process required, meaning the permit process became somewhat
misunderstood. The lodging, under taxation in our chapter 32 requires that if you're going to engage in a lodging, you are to apply for a business license or a license period.
Sure.
Okay. So that's what I'm getting to is was Ms. Grayson aware of that requirement prior to the enactment of the short-term rentals?
I'm gonna have to let her answer that question. I'm sorry, I can't answer it for her.
To be honest with you, because I checked with my accountant at the time, no is the answer, that I was not aware that I had to have that. And the way it was expressed to me from my accountant was that it would go under my Schedule E, which is, for taxes and all that kind of stuff. So short-term and long-term rental went under Schedule E with all my taxes. Does that answer your question?
Not quite.
Because I wasn't even aware that I had to have that.
Okay, let me ask you this, Ms. Grayson, then
Okay.
what documents did the Planning and Zoning Administrator provide to you when you applied for your short-term rental at 618 Reclining Acres?
Say that again, please.
What documents did the Planning and Zoning Administrator give to you pertaining to the application towards your, at 618 Reclining Acres?
Had to fill out the application from the website.
Okay, did she also give you a copy of Chapter 18-45 pertaining to the review process?
I don't recall. I'm going to have to say that because I don't remember that being handed to me. No.
Okay. Also, did she also counsel you on the number of home occupation permits allowable within the village, business registrations allowable within the village?
Per property?
Per registration, business registrations. You're only allowed 4 per resident.
Per property.
No, per resident.
Okay, my understanding was it was per property.
Well,
So that I
short-term
could have
rentals-
4 for 593 and I could have 4 for 618.
Well,
That's what that was my understanding.
okay.
Is that not correct?
Okay, also then, the application for your septic tank is dated 2009.
Okay.
When was it last inspected?
It was inspected this year.
Do you have documentation to back that up?
I do not, and no, I don't. I am buying the house through a real estate contract. So that septic tank permit is still in their name until the contract, until it's moved over into a full mortgage. I have the real estate contract until 2020.
Have they disclosed any problems with the property?
None at all. And I haven't had any since I've owned it in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all?
For now.
Does
Okay.
anyone else have questions?
do just have a
Yes.
point,
Councilor Burkett?
just a point of clarification. It says that you're doing long-term rentals now, is what you have listed on your website.
Mhm.
It does specifically call them vacation rentals. I just went to the website just to make sure that wasn't an old picture. So to me, vacation rental does not equal long-term rental. It equals short-term rental, in my opinion. Can you address that?
Thank you. All I can say is it is on my website. I have gotten no calls from that whatsoever. And I didn't even think about changing the terminology. You're right. I am approved for short-term rentals right now there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask Lori something?
Yes, but just let's hang on for just a second until that's fine. If you have nothing more, that's fine. You may be excused. All right, did you want to get up? Do you have time remaining? I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask if the appellee has time remaining.
Yes.
Do you want to take that time now or do you want to do it as rebuttal? Mr. Holmes?
I was under the impression you did not give rebuttal.
All right, you'll both get a chance to close, okay?
Whatever works. Okay. The signs around the village, they're not me. I did participate in the ones on Reclining Acres Road. He suggests that I've done them all over the village.
Okay,
Not me.
it's really actually not relevant to the
Well,
facts.
then he brought it up, not me.
618.
Okay.
I think it's more helpful if we just try to focus
Okay.
on that.
It was brought up that Ms. Stout recommended the approval for this one. She has recommended approval for several short-term rentals that were denied. There have been no inspections on record or in the permit process for the old overused septic at 618. She admits to using the garage as a rental. She rented all 3 rooms in the house. So there was as many as 6 rooms being rented in that house. It can be looked at on the website that the garage was 2 bedrooms plus a closet that had a bed.
Mr.
Which-
Ackerman, can you clarify for me what time period we're talking about? Because this permit was put into place on what date?
Oh, her permit was approved on 5/19 and
Okay.
all of her website stuff was prior to that.
Correct,
Okay, and they're dated when she did it.
correct.
So she was operating. My point is that the septic is a serious problem that has not been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. She said she moved the renters out of the garage. She didn't do that until April the 10th, a full almost 20 days after the commission requested that she close that down as an illegal building. They stayed until April the 10th when she was told on May 19th to close. Or March 17th. She was told to close it on March 17th. Ms. Stout overrode the commissioners to tell her that she could allow short-term rentals. I don't really understand that. And her 593 was specifically denied for septic, not an incomplete application. She had no documentation proving that it was up to standard. And that it was the reason that her 618 was illegal, whether or not she had a permit, is because of the occupancy loads that she was running through it. You cannot operate a 3-bedroom house septic and have 6 bedrooms being rented. That makes it an illegal. And I find it interesting that Ms.
Okay,
Fiore,
Mr.
all of
Ackerman,
us,
again, the permit that was authorized was not for 6 bedrooms. Is
I
that
understand.
correct? No,
It
but
was not.
I think
I'm just
it's
pointing
a point
out.
that needs to be clarified for the governing body.
Yes, ma'am.
That is not the permit that was.
That's correct. I was just merely bringing it because of the concerns over the septic and the contamination of our groundwater.
All right.
We're very
understood.
concerned about the groundwater in our community. It's been discussed numerous times. Every meeting it comes up.
Sure.
I'm concerned about it too. You know, we all pull our water from the well and we all put our straws in the same glass. Okay.
Point taken.
I also find it interesting that all of a sudden Ms. Fiore has business licenses today that she never had in the past until we brought it to the attention. Another clear violation that Ms. Grayson was aware of. She's the one that controls her property. if she has a renter that's not abiding by village rules, it's her responsibility to get that renter in compliance. Not, am I correct? I believe those are all that I have to say at this moment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. You can come to the microphone.
Never have I advertised 618 with 6 bedrooms, ever. It was the 3 in the house, the downstairs and the 2 upstairs, and the 1 in the converted garage. Okay? Never have I ever advertised 6 bedrooms for that house.
Thank you.
Can I clarify?
Counselor Knight, I think, okay, hang on. I'm going to go for Counselor Burkett. You have a question?
Yes, so the 3 downstairs, 2 upstairs, and 1 in the garage, that is
No,
6.
1 downstairs, 1
I thought you said
downstairs.
3 downstairs.
No, that, the 3 in the house, which is the 1 downstairs and the 2 upstairs.
Okay, and then so with the 1, when there was 1 in the garage, there was 4, but currently there's only 3.
Currently, there's only 3 that
Thank you.
has been shut down completely.
Counselor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. Ms. Grayson, could you recite the number of business licenses you have for 618?
None, other than the permit for the short-term rental, I have no other business license there.
I thought you just said you had 4 business licenses at 618.
No, not at 618. I'm sorry if I said that. That's not accurate. 593 has 3 home occupation. 618 has no home occupation other than Ms. Fiore's that she just got, and the short-term rental permit.
So, and you're not living at 618 at all,
No,
but the short-term rental is in your name for 618.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. If there's nothing more. I think we would like to, thank you. That's
You're
fine.
welcome.
Counselor Knight would like, Ms. Stout, can you come back up to the front here?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yeah, Lori, I just wanted to ask you, I'm sure other people have started businesses or started something on their property that they didn't know they have to have a license for. They come to you and try to figure out what they need to do to get the license, and you help them, right?
Correct. That happens all the time. In this case,
I was going to say, does anything happen to those people that hadn't gotten the correct permits? Or you just help them get through so that you can move forward with that?
I help them move forward because that is the process. You know, if I say you're bad, you shouldn't have done this, and I have Sherry cite them, they're going to go to court, and the judge is going to say you need to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and get permitted. So that's what we do. We go straight to that. And as long as they are making a good faith effort in doing what they need to do to move forward and get it on an agenda, that's what we do.
So there has been other businesses in Corrales that have made the same mistakes.
Oh, gosh, absolutely, all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, car people or mechanics or, you know, who didn't realize that they needed to have a.
Yeah, and it's sometimes similar situation where someone sort of says, hey, this person's doing this, and we contact them and say, hey, you know what, you need to get a license, a home occupation permit, and then a business license. And other times they come to us and say, I didn't realize.
Right, so that's pretty much Corrales's modus operandi, to help people get through the process. If they're doing something wrong, they didn't realize they had a problem until maybe somebody brought it up.
Absolutely, counselor. I mean, you know, you do have people who refuse to comply, and that's when court and citations are appropriate. And when folks do comply and move forward to do so, that's what I help them do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor?
Yes, Counselor.
Mayor Rowe,
Parker.
councilors, Ms. Stout, the question on the sorry, I hate hearing my voice on this thing. A question about the home occupation. Can you just clarify, each property is allowed to have 4 business registrations associated with it? or each resident, or what is that?
Each property is allowed to have up to 4 home occupations per our ordinance.
Okay. I'm looking at something here and maybe it's just outdated. It says no more than 2 businesses are permitted on your property.
That did get updated, so it should be codified. Is that
Okay.
online? Or
Yeah.
is that an old? Great. Yeah, it got changed in 2017.
Show you there.
Now
Yeah,
it says
okay.
up to 4.
I just wanted to make sure because I saw this and was like, something's
Yeah,
wonky. Okay.
that got changed.
I think I got a question from my right side, Councilor Murray.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Lori, so when you're talking to an applicant, do you advise them about the home occupation short-term business registrations that the maximum limit they're allowed?
Occupancy limits?
No, the home occupation short-term rental business registrations, the maximum allowed per property or per.
Well, the ordinance, our ordinance says you can have up to 4 home
Did you
occupations.
counsel Ms. Grayson about the possibility that maybe she might be exceeding the business license?
She hasn't exceeded it, but if that were to happen, I would definitely have that conversation.
Okay, do your forms, do you stipulate on your forms that how many business licenses they already have?
No, not for a home occupation. Yes, it does say on the form for a home occupation application that you can have up to 4 home occupations on a residential property. It says it on the application itself. So we do go over that.
Under section 1845G, where it talks about short-term rentals, one of the last sentences, it says, short-term residential permits are issued to the owners of the property and not assignable, transferable. So if she owns 618, then that business registration is assigned to her as she lives on property 593 Reclining Acres. Is that correct?
That would be her mailing address, but the address of the actual business is 618 Reclining Acres.
No, her business license for the tax purposes is stipulated at 593 Reclining Acres. That is the tax ID that has been submitted to us for evidence, basically. So the last sentence I see in our ordinances, short-term residential permits are issued to the owners of the property and are not assignable or transferable, meaning that the tax ID is assigned to 593 Reclining Acres. That is the ID that she submitted, and that is the address that that ID is assigned to. Short-term rental for 618 has been assigned to her, and she lives at 593 Reclining Acres. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Well, no, sir. I mean, the business is taking place at 618. She lives in a different location across the street. That's true.
But the business registration would be assigned to her tax ID. Is that not correct?
Aaron, I may need you to help me out here. I think the business license is for the business itself,
The tax
where
ID.
it's located, correct?
Correct. We in the business registration application, we ask for a mailing address and a site address. And the site address is what we're assigning to the business registration for operation. So.
But the tax ID.
For example, if I own a commercial property here in the village, but I live somewhere else, it wouldn't, my taxes would go through there, so and the site address is for the commercial zone. It's not through where I live somewhere else, if that makes sense. I don't, my taxes run through, well, no, the permit runs for the commercial property, not my residential property.
I think what I'm trying to get at is that we ask for a tax ID, and it is assigned an address to the property, which is right now at 593 Reclining Acres. Is that correct?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, that was what was submitted to us in the packet. So the last sentence of what I just read about short-term rentals, meaning that it was assigned to the property or to the owner of the property. She is not living at 618 Reclining Acres. Typically, our home occupations and our short-term rentals, the person usually lives on the property. In this case, she has bought another property and seeking to use it with the tax ID that she submitted in our application.
I don't know if this helps or not, but I used to own businesses and I had one CRS form, but I had numerous business locations. But my CRS form just had one
But-
location on it.
Okay, that's fine if you have a businesses, but in our village ordinances, you're allowed only four business registrations to a property.
Correct. I'm sorry. I thought maybe we were talking about CRS form there for a
Well,
minute.
no,
But
but
the
I'm-
actual business license, the business license is issued to 618 Reclining Acres because that's where the business is taking place.
But according to our ordinance, it is assigned to the owner. Yeah, and the owner lives at 593 Reclining Acres.
Correct.
Okay, yes, certainly, go ahead.
So I think
Councilor
this is an interesting point from a home occupation standpoint. It's difficult to give a home occupation license to someone who's not occupying that home. But I think it's a different issue than the short-term rental license. I think it's something that does need to be explored though, because there may be a different kind of business license she needs for that, since she's not occupying that home. It may not be a home occupation license. But the short-term rental license, I think is
Right.
probably
I think,
separate
again,
issue.
we just need to keep focusing on what this permit is before us, and then we can go and see if there is a problem with that part of the statute. I am going to ask right now, I've been told, sub rosa, that we really need to take a break right now. So, and I understand that. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back. Thank you very much.
Is that actually long enough? Is that
Yeah,
actually long
please,
enough?
I'm sorry. Oh, me, please. All right. In the interest, am I on? Okay, thank you. If you could please come back to order. Thank you. In the interest of our not being here until tomorrow, I'm going to say that at this point, I think we've heard from both parties. And at this point, it would be my recommendation that the governing body, adjourn to the the conference room across the parking lot for deliberations, and then come back and announce our decision. And I will need to take a vote on that. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we go across the street and discuss the appeal.
Okay, I have a second? All right, I'm going to take a voice vote. Councilor Parker?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett? Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
All right.
Councilor Lucero?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to leave the building.
And we'll see you next year.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. And we'll come back. Thank you so much.
Darn.
Okay, I'll guard him.
Mayor, do you need to keep?
Hopefully, it's when you go to bed rather than when you wake up. Tomorrow morning? Well, he drove back. I know he came back here like that. So Chief, they didn't find those three folks in the Arroyo that the kids?
I heard, I've been checking the news.
Kids?
We heard the alert, we turned the radios on for Albuquerque and we're listening. They were describing like a wall of water coming out. They moved like 8 feet, 10 feet of water. Yeah, no, basically, it's pretty bad.
That storm that was over the mountains just poured. I heard like 3 or 4 inches right there. The foothills.
They did a flash flood warning. It was Arroyo, so a lot of people.
The concrete just speeds it up.
Most of the Virgin towns.
Hey.
It's freezing in here. I got some paper. And I'm on. Will you go? Would you like to go? Morning or night? Oh, yeah. I just.
Drinks all around. Ice cream all around.
Yes, I.
It's chilly. No, but all your stuff is still there. Guaranteed.
Really needed these to get in. Thank you. All right. All right, thank you. We are back in session. I will accept a motion. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, do we have to do a roll call?
Mayor,
That's right, we have to do a roll call. Pardon me, it is late. We are back in session. I'm going to do a roll call that we are now in open session. And I would also like to state for the record that no decision was made in the closed session there. And that will be in our minutes as well. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Here. Councilor Murray?
Here.
Councilor Knight? Here. Councilor Burkett? Councilor
Present.
Parker here. All right, we're all now back on the record in here. I will take a motion regarding the decision.
Mayor,
Yes.
thank you, Mayor. Councilors, I move that we deny the appeal in front of the Planning and Zone Commission decision.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I will take a voice vote on that. Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Knight? Aye. Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Thank you very much. At this time, the governing body has made a decision, and I'm going to direct our counsel, Randy Audio, to prepare the findings, conclusions, and decision of the governing body. This document will be prepared and will be distributed to confirm this vote and will be voted on a date we will now decide. Is this possible to wait until our next regular meeting, which I believe is August 17th?
yes.
Yes, all right. Thank you very much. That concludes the matter. All right. All right, so we're going to move on to consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2121. This is a resolution authorizing year-end adjustments of various funds for fiscal year 2020, 2021. Raina is chomping at the bit to get up here. Any questions for Raina concerning this? Yes, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, councilors. So, Raina, these adjustments, is this new money or is this money left over or has it been spent?
This is money that we had not anticipated, so it's extra than what we had originally budgeted.
So what will we do with it?
It has not, it's not spent, but we do have to budget extra money that comes in regardless if we spend it or not.
So it's available for next year's budget?
If we would like to add extra to next year's budget, yes. So in other words, our revenues were higher than what we had originally anticipated at the end of the year.
So that's what I guess is what my question is, what happens to that money that is left over? I mean, that's what got us to the LGIP money, is that money got stuffed away somewhere and eventually added up to the 4 million we got. I just want to make sure that the money that we have left over is, we know where it's going to go for next year.
Yes, so right now, what we are budgeting is just all your revenues from grocery receipts, everything we make. You can always add prior year money to the budget, but we did not do that this year, no. So
Okay.
it's just adding up. Every year, I think last year and the year before might have been around 300,000, and it's just adding up every year.
Okay.
Yeah, and this one, so this stays in our Wells Fargo. It is not in LGIP as of now.
I had a
Yes,
question.
Counselor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. On the flood control, it says that we've budgeted 66,573.63. I was, again, goes back to the questions that I was asking Chief Martinez about, can we use some of this money to purchase that property to, for like holding ponds and things like that? Is that available?
Mayor, Council, if I may address that, she's asking a question on the budget.
Okay, would it be okay, Counselor Knight? These kind of need to be done in order. This is just
Oh.
the year-end adjustments, then we're going to go into the
Okay.
final quarter, and then we'll go in the final budget.
Okay.
I think you're asking a final budget question,
Okay,
right?
that's
Okay.
fine.
All right, are there any more questions regarding the year-end adjustments? All right, could I have a motion to approve this item then?
Mayor?
Yes, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve Resolution 21-21,
Thank you.
authorizing year-end adjustments.
Thank you. Do you have a second for that, Counselor Knight?
Kevin did.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'm going to do a voice vote. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Here.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So the year-end adjustments have been approved. So now we're going to go on to consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2122. This is a resolution approving the final quarter financial report ending June 30th, 2021. Any questions for Raina regarding this fourth quarter report? No? All right. Can I have a motion to approve then?
I move we approve Resolution 2122.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'm going to take a voice vote. Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the last item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2123. That's a resolution approving the final budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. And Rainey, you have one change to that you wanted to
Okay.
highlight for us.
So yes, if you look at the summary, which is the third page, not page number 3, just the third page. On the bottom red number, 379,200, that's the amount we transfer out of general fund into special funds. That number is right. But if you look at actual page number 2, it's 359,200. That should match the third page, and it should be 379,200.50.
And you made that change, right?
I made that change.
Okay. Yes, Counselor Burkett?
And my document went down, but I'm pretty sure it's on page 21. There is a significant discrepancy. It looks like it's a 2 decimal points that are in a different spot than they were in the column next to it. Just wanted to verify that I'm seeing that correctly.
Page 21.
It's, I think, fire down at the bottom. There's I wouldn't give you the exact numbers, but it went down. Yep, so non-capital, there's a 4605.66, and then there's a $460,566 directly next to it, which looks like the exact same number, but with 2 decimal points difference, shifted over.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
budgeted 46.
Raina, do you want?
Tanya?
Let it never be said I don't look at the budget.
You know if that number's right? Because he's saying,
Oh, fire wildlands?
this is one of fire department special funds.
If I may, so that's a special fund that we use, the chief uses for traveling, the crews that go out of state, and for the projects in the Bosque. I would really have to look at that, but we wouldn't want 460,000 in that budget.
I mean, to me, it looks like, yeah, then it was just entered differently.
We'll take it, but this is the final budget should be the correct one. I think that other one probably looks like there was a journal or a bar that was put in and then reversed, would be my guess.
Good eye.
I'm sure people.
That's why his business license is coming, or business degree is coming up.
All right, are there any other questions? Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
on page 17 about the flood control. I was just wondering, again, going back to what I had asked the chief earlier about the funds to buy the, the vacant lands to be holding ponds or, flood control, things like that. Can we use any of that money to do that?
Mayor,
From this
Counselor,
budget?
this particular fund, it comes from legislative money, and so it is earmarked for something. I am not sure if this is one of Michael's or one of Chief's. That's
Oh,
Michael.
okay.
So, and I'm not sure if he has plans for that money yet, but I could definitely get with him and find out what he plans to use that for.
Just a thought, because when I was going through it, I was like, oh, well, here's some money. So,
Yeah, sometimes those contracts are real in-depth and tell you exactly what, and sometimes they're more broad. So we'll have to get with Michael and see what he had planned for that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions about the final budget and with those corrections that were spotted and will be made? Hearing none, could I have a motion on this item?
I move we approve 2123.
All right. And second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
All right, Raina feels a lot better now because her budget is passed for the year. She can get some sleep. Yeah. All right, number 5 is the consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2124, a resolution authorizing the sale of an unused right-of-way along Old Church Road. I don't know, Randy, did you want to speak to this, or perhaps Lori, as to what this is about?
Hello again, Mayor, councilors. Miss Sarah Chadwick resides at 1000 Old Church Road and contacted me about, I'm going to say about a year and a half ago, wishing to purchase. She lives in a historic property on Old Church Road, and her property does not actually abut Old Church Road. There's a piece of excess right of way between the road and her property, and she inquired about purchasing that. So I talked to our counsel, Mr. Audio, and the procedure was for her to get an appraisal of that small piece of land, which she has done. And she is willing to purchase it for the appraisal price. And the village will also request that she do a summary plat, combining the two pieces into one lot. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Have questions from councilors on this? Yes, Counselor Murray?
All right, this is gonna probably drag you out a little bit. I'm a little concerned how the village obtained this property in the first place. How did we come up with this odd notch of property off of Old Church Road?
I can probably answer that. So Miss Chadwick lives on a very historic property, which is an old Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District tract that has the boundary it has. And then Old Church Road has moved over the millennia, And where it is now, there's just a piece of excess right of way that's just ours by default.
Well, okay, so most surveyors that I know of would use, especially I talked to Michelle Rochette about this. Most surveyors I know would done meets and bounds. I don't see why they would have carved out a small section and created that notch. They would have carried that property line straight across. Now, in talking to Michelle, and maybe I misunderstood her, does the Casa San Ysidro property line come across Old Church Road and meet the property line of those?
There is another property between Ms. Chadwick's and the old church. And then the property in question has never been platted, ever. Ms. Chadwick lives on an old Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District tract.
I understand that. I'm just trying to say that I think there was a mistake when they platted this out, and we should have never had that piece of property to begin with. Do we have the original platting available to look
There
at?
is no plat, sir.
I was told there is a 1920s plat, and those properties were subdivided. And also I'm also a little concerned about the price, because $2,500 is not a huge amount of money. And I'd gladly pay $5,000 for that little piece of property, because I can do a lot of things with it.
Well, it's in a front setback, so nothing can be built on it.
It's not a matter of being built. I could always run a hot plate or something out there and sell widgets or whatever, at the next event. But I'm just trying to get at, I think the appraisal she got, I think that property's worth more than $2,500. That's what I'm trying to get at. Why would we give up 4 parking spots? I mean, I understand.
There are 4 parking spots. I think that's incorrect, isn't it? I think
I've seen 4 cars parked there.
Wasn't there a mistake on that?
Well, it's the access to Miss Chadwick's lot. I've never seen it full, so I can't answer the question
Well,
about how many cars could park there.
We have enough problems with parking at the old church when there are events. Why would the village give up,
How much property is this?
0.0699 acres, because we're going to retain a 5-foot shoulder that we will continue to own.
Councilor Parker?
Mayor Rowe, councilors, missed out. I think if because of the way this property is set up with that wall coming across there, if you look at the plat that's the property survey that was in the packet, I don't think the village should encourage people to park there, because to park there and leave, they have to back out into Old Church Road, and that's really not a good idea.
Well, but are we giving them property away? That's what I'm trying.
I see your point on there, and I've never been involved with a real estate transaction where the seller is the one that provides the appraisal, but
I mean, what's that going to do to her property value? If she buys that property for $2,500, what's that do now to her property value? Have we increased her value of her property?
Oh, absolutely. And I guess let me back it up. I've never been in a real estate transaction where the buyer is providing the appraisal on there.
Yeah.
That's the only wonky thing I think that I see with this.
So maybe we need another appraisal done by the village.
But we may be spending the difference of the two property values on the
We're not in
second
to make a
appraisal.
profit.
Councilor Audio, is there some reason to suspect the bona fides of the person who gave the appraisal here?
Mayor, councilors, in a situation like this, because it's such a small slice of property, it has no value but for a tail to allow her access to her property. It made no sense to Lori and I that we would be debating about other potential uses, because it is literally her only access to her property. And she's using it anyway, to get to her property. She's willing to pay us to own that access to her property, which is a nice thing if you have property to have actual access to a road. So about the value of it, appraisers work under the auspices of professional code. I mean, we certainly say, okay, we're going to stop, we're going to pay for our own appraisal where we think this is too little, but the size of the piece of a parcel is very small. And it's entirely up to the governing body if they wish to get another appraisal on it. But I, in this instance, for a tail of a small piece of right-of-way like this, it does not seem money well spent, but that's just my opinion, not a legal opinion either.
All right, thank you. I do note that we have 3 people who signed up to speak to this, so thank you, Lori. Let me call Nan Kimball. You're listed first. Thank you.
So, hello, thank you very much. I'm the president of the Krellis Historical Society, and I am afraid that we are the ones that started the incredible explosion of concern about the sale of this property. It was mistakenly reported to our members that the part of the parcel of land that Sarah wanted to purchase was in our parking lot. So it would be an area that they would take out of our parking area. That obviously isn't true. I actually went to Mary Davis, who knows the answer to everything, and she confirmed to me that the parcel of land that Sarah is interested in was never a part of the old church property from ever. So this is Counselor, people do park there when there is overflow parking, when there are large events at the old church. But they also park along in front of other people's property in the same way. They park wherever they can park. I've got to say, I think what Sarah has asked to do is to purchase a piece of land that she's been using and everybody else has been using because nobody thought about it until she did. And she wants to make it a part of the rest of her property so that when she's ready to do whatever she's going to do with it, at some point, it will be a part and there won't be a question anymore about how she can get in and out of to her house and park in her space. So in my opinion, she's doing the village a great favor by offering to buy this. And I really, really do want all of you counselors to understand that if you got a flurry of emails and phone calls from people who were concerned about the purchase of the parking lot, they now know, I believe, that the parking area at the old church is not going to be affected by this sale.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron?
Gosh, not everybody knows I have a name. I'm Michelle's husband, Rod Frechette. And very briefly, I just feel I have to establish a little bit of my credentials. I've been a member of the Historic Society for just almost the year or two after we moved in. I think Mel and Pauline Eisenstadt made sure of that. So and Michelle's been pretty active in it. Across the street from me was my good friend, Alan Mingy, and his wife, Shirley. And I think people realized that Ellen had a little bit of a hand in helping with the old church and making it what it is in the Historic Society. And I assisted Alan and Shirley with their belongings being sold to the City of Albuquerque Museum, as Alan wished, and also dividing up the property to give to the museum. So I did that with a friend of mine who was the real hard work and legal mule on it. So I just want to say, I think this originated as a tempest in a teacup and a total misunderstanding. And that's why I feel I had to lay out a little bit of my connections. Alan passed away a couple months ago. And before we went out to the funeral in Kansas, I was lucky enough to get a small piece of 1930s historic old church floorboard. And I made sure to put that at his feet in his casket, along with a nice 20 centavo Mexican coin to pay the ferryman. So, Michelle and I moved to the village in July of '90 and bought what became 1,000 Old Church Road. We woke up one morning. I know we had a little advance notice, but hey, what number would you like to be? And I was going, I want 999. And I see we got 1,000 on the phone pole. So, but one of the things we did, being young lawyers, is we wanted to know more about that little piece of property, which is smaller than the wall behind you. And one end came out maybe to this pole and the other end maybe to where Sarah's sitting. And is dirt. The road was dirt. And depending on who had what to drink, that determined the width of the road. Some cars came very close to the wall that is in the front of the property. I don't know. I think Ross Howard may have put that wall up in the late 70s, early 80s. The Hakes bought it in, I think, around 84 and gave us quit claim to all their interest in that little parcel up front. The other thing to understand is the backyard is fully landlocked. So I spent our 11 years there with a wheelbarrow going through the house to get to the backyard for Michelle to plant her gardens and our chickens and turkeys. That's the only place to park. And on the front yard and between the house and the wall, one side is the septic tank. And boy, did that make great peaches in the peach tree next to the front door. The other side is a well. So you can't park or put equipment on top of these things. So you need the parking out front of the wall. What else? The current paved road came in, I don't even remember whether it was 2 or 3 or 4 years later, whatever it was, but I do remember Michelle and a couple of her friends were all up in arms. They didn't want it paved. But early on, I wanted to have possession of this piece, sole and exclusive. Being young lawyers, I looked up the New Mexico law on that. One of the things we couldn't do is figure out who owned this. Nobody had title. We couldn't pay taxes on something nobody owned. So, and we didn't know about the provision that it reverts to the village. I don't even know if that existed then, but might have been later. I don't know. So I did lay out railroad ties. We had a nice old apricot tree in front of the wall. We had a nice big Spanish broom in front of the wall. Had some other stuff, sage and whatnot. But each Christmas, I think it was for 3 Christmases in a row, show would have these live piñons. And so I think 2 of them are still out front along that wall toward the road to help define it. Also to help me push my railroad ties out and grab more for more parking. And then when the road got put down, I made sure to define that piece of property with railroad ties. So lo and behold, that's where the road was paved. So never once has anybody ever said, gee, that's not yours, belongs to us. A couple of people have asked, can we park here? Maybe over time somebody has attempted to park there and we said, no, this is ours. Michelle made up a no parking sign, I think our first year. So I'm supposed to read all these little fine bullet points, but I think you get the picture. And all I can say to answer your kind of questions is it really was a big stretch of dirt, very sandy, dusty dirt that people were all over the map on. And the way Alan explained it, the way Johnny and Evelyn Losack explained it, the way the Montaños, who lived in the little sliver of the house next door, close to the church, explained it. It is back in the day, I think it was the Montaño family is the one that donated the church land after the flood wiped out the village and the earlier church. So where's the high point of ground? Well, it was between what's now the Casa San Ysidro, 1000 Old Church Road, and another place that used to be the trainers on the other side of the church. So that was the high ground. Let's build a new church there. And so people would come in their buggies and on foot, and that's where they would visit. I saw an old plat in that little historic book on Corrales. I don't want to say, but there's something there, but I don't think it's definitive enough to say that little strip. Other than that, I can't say. So anyhow, we used this place, we kept it clean, we planted things there, we harvested fruit there. We got the quitclaim from Berlin. So essentially for 40 years, this was like the exclusive property of whoever owned 1000 Old Church Road or whatever it was designated before that point. Period. Make sure I don't miss nothing here. Yeah, and of course I did also consult Alan about it because I didn't want to PO my neighbor across the street who helped me pluck turkeys and do all the rest of the fun stuff. So I don't know if you have any questions, but that's trying to put a little color on the lack of title. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you a lot. Matt Spangler?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Matt Spangler. I'm an attorney and I represent Sarah Chadwick, who's here with me. And she asked me to speak for her to you about this. Obviously, we would like to ask for your approval of this item. Sarah lives at 1000 Old Church Road in Corrales. She's asking for this approval of a conveyance of a very small parcel. It's less than 1/10 of an acre. It's immediately adjacent to her home, to the west of it. And it's always been used as the parking area for this home, even before she bought it. And so it's actually, as use, a part of this property. And I think I may be part of the reason why we're before you, because I suggested that there may be an issue in title, and the easiest way to solve it would be to get a deed from the village. And so a year and a half ago, she started this and came to you to clear this up. I just want a few quick points. I know it's really late. I'll try to go quickly because I don't want to take your time. But there's two things that I want to tell you about this house that would militate against for approving this. And that is one, this house has a unique situation. I've never seen anything like it, and I've been doing real estate law here for 40 years. This house is actually, it was a larger house. And I guess when the gentleman, Mr. Montano, died, he had 3 children. And what he decided, or in his will or his personal representative decided, that they would just divide not only his land, but the house into 3 parts. So they just drew the line right down the middle of the house. So the big house became 3 houses, and Ms. Chadwick has the middle. So there's houses on either side. There's like nothing on either side except for houses. So there's no access on either side. And then behind, as Mr. Frechette said, there's no access behind either. This land is the only way into the house. So the other parts of the house are on different lots. This is tract 142. There's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in the house. It's a full house, even though it's been divided. And there's no other area for parking available at all except for this property. So that's the first thing I wanted to tell you. And I also wanted you to know that this lot is not adjacent to the old church property. It's 1 lot away because obviously there's those properties that were divided. So it's actually separated, and there's walls on the property to the south. The second thing that I wanted you to know that I think would be important to your decision is the history. Sarah Chadwick bought this house in 2001 from Rod and Michelle Frechette, who you all know. As a part of that purchase, she obtained a quitclaim deed to this property. And so when she bought it, she understood that it was her property. And she's used it that way from 2001 when she bought it until today. She's used it as a part of her property. When the Frechettes bought the property in 1990, they also got a quitclaim deed to this property. So there's a chain of title to this property outside of the village. And the purpose tonight was simply to clear the title so there'd be no question. So she actually thought she was buying this property when she bought the house. As I said, the Frechettes in 1990 received a quitclaim deed for this property from Valinda Parker and Sherman Hakes. And from 1990 to 2001, when the Frechettes sold it to Sarah, they improved it, they landscaped it, they put up walls, and they basically used it as their own. The Parker Hakes, they bought it in 1984. They also used it as their own. And so this small parcel of land has been the parking area for this house. And for all intents and purposes, has been a part of this lot since at least 1984, over 40 years. So that's really the end of my prepared comments. I'd ask you to approve it, but I wanted to answer just one question that came up from the counselor. Brian Godfrey did the appraisal. He's a very respected appraiser, Godfrey Appraisals. They do appraisals for NMDOT, for City of Rio Rancho, for many governmental entities. They do a good job. He's very well respected, is what I can say about the appraisal. I know that there was some controversy that came up recently, and my understanding, and I think it's been confirmed, is that was based on a mistaken understanding of where this lot was. So I'd ask you to consider that. Sarah spent over $5,000 already on this process, getting a survey, appraisal, and following through on the process. She's very far into this. This property is essential to the use of her land. So we would sincerely ask you to approve this and let her go forward and make it a part of her property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Spangler. I have a motion.
I do have 3 quick letters.
Okay. Of course you do.
This first one is from Lindley Simmer York. I own the property at 984 Old Church Road, directly to the south of 1000 Old Church Road. The proposed resolution 2124, as I understand it, reflects long-standing usage of the small undeeded parcel of land to the west of 1000 Old Church Road and should help ensure that the property adjoining mine will be well cared for in the future. Accordingly, I have no objection to the adoption of the proposed resolution 2124. The second letter is from Jan Everett. I am in approval of the sale of the land in front of Miss Chadwick's property to her. I have lived here for many, many years as her neighbor and have watched her for 18 years tend to the property. I feel it would make no sense to deny her this request. Thank you for your consideration. And the last one is from Helen and Kent Boyer. Writing to you from 1024 Old Church Road, which is the northernmost section of the Gutierrez/Sandoval/Cordova house. Kent and I are strongly in favor of Sarah Chadwick being able to purchase the land in front of 1000 Old Church Road for her use as private parking for her residence. All of us in the houses begun by the Gutierrez family strongly believe in being good abutters to the museum and the church, and we maintain our properties so as to keep the historic center of Corrales intact. Thank you for your consideration of Sarah's purchase plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2124.
I second.
There's a second from two people. So, all right, I'm going to do a voice vote. Council Carpenter?
Mayor, I just have a couple of comments. We're going to discuss it now.
Okay.
Okay. I can appreciate the position that Ms. Chadwick is in, but you know, as the good woman mentioned earlier, the stir that this has kind of caused, whether it was a mistake or not, whether people were misunderstood the piece of property that was in question, it did create quite the generation of conversations, many of which landed in my email box, and I know it landed a lot in other counselors' email boxes, and many conversations that I had with this. And the biggest issue that I beyond the purchase price, which was somewhat of an issue, the people I discussed it with, you know, declared it that this particular piece of property was an asset to the village and that we should not sell it. And it was used for many other uses throughout the year, to where they just didn't think, they thought this property would be better left in the ownership of the village. Other issues that of course, they were concerned with the process of it. You know, understanding that Ms. Chadwick would be the only person that would be able to utilize this, but they were concerned that they were the only ones that she's the only one that's able to buy it, which, and to me, was somewhat of a valid concern. And another thing that I kind of thought about was the precedent that this might set. I don't know how many other issues like this there may be, although that particular area is kind of wrought with some of these similar situations, to where would we be liable not only to be required to sell, but to require to sell at the 80 cents an acre, 80 cents a foot, I apologize. And furthermore, like I said, and a lot of these came from my district, particularly, I'm not quite sure why, but they all came, a lot of the wish to keep it came from people in my district, and yet being just one representative there, I have to listen to them. So that's all I had to say about that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, thank you. Along the same lines as Councilor Lucero, it was the same thing. It was the process of one of the issues that was brought up as well. And are we skirting on the anti-donation clause because we're giving that such a low price on a price per square foot? Now, I read through the appraisal, and it's not a formal appraisal. It was basically based on a subjective process. And consequently, you know, I understand, you know, you hire an appraiser, you expect him to do the job, and he will do the job to the best of his abilities. He also used the New Mexico DOT right away as part of his appraisal process. I can find a little bit of issue with that too, because a lot of roadways exist out in the rural areas where property prices are probably not very high. You get into the city, prices start going up, price per square foot goes up. I think that I'm a little concerned about how much we're letting this go for. when it might be worth more than what we think it is. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Do we have any more comments before we take a vote? Council Parker?
Mayor Rowe, councilors, I just want to say for the record on here that to me, this piece of property, yes, the village owns it. Yes, the village can make money off of it. But the reality is this property is valuable to one of the people that live in our village. And it's an opportunity to basically correct something without turning the screws on that person that lives in our village. And I think that instead of looking at this in the manner of, we could have made more money, that we're doing this in the manner of, we're looking out for the people that live in our village. And that's how I'm looking at it. So.
Thank you.
I think I agree with that. I think if anything, she's overpaying for it because it has been assumed to be her property for years.
Well, all right. I think maybe we'll take a vote now. Councilor Parker?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett?
Yes.
Councilor Knight?
Yes.
Councilor Murray?
No.
Councilor Lucero?
No.
Was that a no?
No.
Okay.
Sounds like a
Well, I vote yes, so it's going to pass. Thank you. All right, let's move on to number 6, which is the discussion, presentation from Mr. Cog on Chapter 18 review and updated sign ordinance. Woohoo! How long have you waited for this moment?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for fitting me into the agenda tonight. I know it's very packed. I'll try and be brief. My name is Maida Rubin. I'm a senior planner at the Mid-Region Council of Governments, and as you may know, I've been working on the sign section of the village code to propose some edits, as well as the zoning sections of the village code in Chapter 18. And for our purposes, that is 1826 through 52. So far, Mr. Cog has performed some analysis on those sections and reviewed it. We've had 7 steering committee meetings so far. The steering committee has been comprised of some planning and zoning commissioner members, as well as council appointees. And they've been really helpful in providing some perspective from the village for some edits that might be necessary and guiding our proposed edits so far. We have worked with them to review sections of the ordinance together and have been incorporating committee feedback into our proposed edits. And our next steps are hopefully, we are projecting 3 more steering committee meetings to finish reviewing zoning code text sections with them. And then at council, this is up to you all, but I've talked with staff about this process for discussion, review, and potential adoption of these edits. And what we are thinking is that at regularly scheduled council meetings, 4 of them, I believe, including this one, and not including posting and adoption, breaking up sections of the code that we have been editing and having it as a discussion item for you all to walk through, see if there are things we missed, if there are things you would like us to change, getting that posted on the village website as we go section by section so that the public can really dive into this if they have any comments. The public was welcome to sit in on our committee meetings, but it was a technical committee meeting, or they were technical committee meetings. So we allowed for public comments at the end of these meetings, but they weren't heavily attended. And we did provide an email to provide comments, but we were thinking that this would be a good forum to solicit some input from the public and just have them as discussion items. And then later in the year to propose adoption all at once. And there are a couple different ways we could do this. The sign section is referenced in Chapter 18, but it is in Chapter 8. So it could potentially be adopted first if that is the preference of the council. It does point to several different sections in Chapter 18. And so I would want all of the references to be accurate. And then I would propose the rest of the Chapter 18 edits while they are discussed section by section to be adopted all together so that they can be cohesively considered, because they do reference back and forth. And for example, definitions in the zoning section is part of what we've been looking at. And sometimes you need to revisit those to add a definition, for example. So I'm happy to answer questions about this process, but also the sign section with proposed edits is what's up for discussion tonight, I believe. And what we've done is tried to shift the regulations to a content neutral set of regulations for signs. So that would be for time, place, and manner of a sign rather than the content. So a realtor sign, for example. And this largely regulates the sign types by zone and simplifies it a little bit. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do I have questions from the counselors? Yes, Counselor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, councilors. But I noticed that in a lot of it, you say signs shall not exceed 5 feet per sign face. Now, are you talking about 5 feet per side? Or how are you determining the square footage? Because I think before in the sign ordinance, you were allowed X number of square feet.
I believe, let me find the right section, but I believe we defined sign face and differentiated it from sign area, and that would be one side of the sign, but let me double check before I tell you for sure.
Maybe I missed that.
Sign face in this would mean one side of the sign, including the content area and frame, not including the supports. Sign area, in contrast, means the combined area of all sign faces.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? For Maida? Yeah, no, I guess not. I'd like to thank you for all the work you're doing. I mean, I know this is kind of a big project. And I think you've explained it, but you want to make sure that this thought is that we'll get more public input and then we could kind of pass a cohesive ordinance at the end as opposed to doing little pieces that.
Correct. However, we understand the need to have a working sign ordinance as soon as possible. So if that's something that needs to happen sooner, I'll leave that up to you and the council.
Right. And for those members of the council that may not remember, there have been some court cases that have really changed what a municipality can and can't do in relation to signage. So we want to be in compliance with the law.
Can I ask one brief question? So how are we picking the order of these subcategories of Section 18 that we're bringing up? What puts signs towards the front of the list? Just I mean, it seems like we have some other stuff within Section 18 that we're also wanting to address that in my eyes is a higher priority. So I'm curious how we're prioritizing these.
Sure. I think largely it sticks out as standalone, whereas the rest of the ordinance in Section 18, Chapter 18, it references each other a little more. And so it stands out to me as a good candidate to be adopted first. And I know that that is important. However, you're right. It's hard when everything is a priority or there are multiple competing priorities to figure out what to do first. And I've talked with staff back and forth about the best way to approach this. So I think as cohesively as possible would be my hope. I did talk with Aaron a little bit about potentially circling back and making sure that all of the references were correct later. But the sign section is a little standalone and the rest of it is less so to my eye.
I'm sure that if the governing body wished to make recommendations, they would be welcome to do so.
Right.
Can you fix the appeal dates? from 10 to 20 days?
Lori and I put that on our.
Yes, now you're just getting giddy. Yeah, I think that's really a good idea because again, if any of the counselors have a particular code section or part of the 18 that they think is important, please let her know. We think
Right.
it's all important, but.
It is all important.
All important.
But yes, and what was I going to say? There have already been some sections of the code that have been updated and adopted by the council that we are rolling back into it. For example, the language on casitas that just went through the council, that has been rolled into our edits. So we are working on a moving target as well.
You feel you're on time schedule, doing well?
I think so. We just have a few more meetings with the committee to wrap up the sections that we were discussing. And we've gone back and forth with them on a few sections, but I think we have a good rhythm. And then if we can schedule these out at council as discussion items, I think it will be easy to do, well, easy to do by the end of the year. But
thank you very much. If there are no more questions, yes.
Just one thing. We do have a member of the public who forgot to sign in that he wished to speak to this item, so if you'd like to allow it, you may.
Certainly.
Mr. Flora?
Yes, I've been following the Chapter 18 ordinance reviews and all that on that. And I don't have any problems with the signage, issues with what they're doing. The only issue I have is they're throwing in other things besides signage with this ordinances. They're talking about changing the ordinances, on signage and rewriting that. But when they're throwing in other issues that don't pertain to signs and trying to get that passed in along with the signage, then there's a problem because, people don't know what they're voting on, for one. They're not being aware of this other issue that's being put in with the signage. It's I hate to say it, I would agree to it in a way if it was done right, but when you're throwing in a road gate entrance to property in with the signage, it doesn't give the public the awareness that it's being passed in with this other issue. I have no, problem with it being a separate issue, but when it's in with the signage, it shouldn't be, in with that. And if they do pass this, they should be just passing it as the signage part of it, not the road issue part.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Maida. The next item is discussion of the updated cannabis ordinance. And I think we do have a presentation from our attorney. Thanks.
Oh, needs more homework.
Randy, do I need to make any kind of time because it's clearly going to go past 10? Does it matter?
No.
Good.
No, we get to go as long as we want.
Goody. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to be brief. The good news on this is that it is going to be a moving target for us for the next probably several months, 6-7 months. The reason we're trying to get out ahead of this now is because the first date that arises that is significant is September 1. And that is when applicants can apply for growing permits. And that's important for all other permits because there can be integrated applications made on properties that are growing. They can also apply for other marijuana uses down the road. So what we may end up with is if we don't get out in front of this and have some regulations on the books that are likely to be legal when all the dust settles, then we may not be able to have any say on where these grows occur and we won't have any ability to regulate. The state still will. So that's why we're trying to get ahead of this. This is just for an introduction tonight for publication. So all of you will have time to read this. We are going to read it more. We will get more input from other forums like the Municipal League, like the Department of the Licensing and Regulations Department, and then we might actually have regulations in place. They are still not in place as we speak now. That's why this is a moving target. This handout that I just gave you is just an overview. I'm not going to belabor it, but what I wanted to let you all know is what we're dealing with, which is a marked sea change from the state of New Mexico in regards to marijuana. It is going to be legal for most purposes. Obviously, private sale of large quantities is still going to be prohibited. You can still not smoke marijuana in public, for example, but for personal use, every individual in the state of New Mexico can have up to 6 mature plants growing in their home or yard, as long as it's not within public view, and may smoke in their own home and on their own premises, and may give their product to people. They can't sell it, but they can give it to family and friends. Be some interesting Christmases coming up, I'm sure. But it is just a sea change. This is going to be completely different for all of us. And what we are attempting to regulate in this draft that we have proposed is all commercial uses that can occur within the village. We cannot prohibit the sale of marijuana, the growth of marijuana, or even the manufacturing of marijuana products within the village. We cannot flat out prohibit it. We can place it within certain zones, and we can regulate time, place, and manner restrictions, but we cannot prohibit it. We have said, for example, in our draft, none is allowed within the historic zone. And that, we believe, falls within a time, place, and manner restriction that's reasonable and appropriate. The other two that you will see in here is retail sales and consumption rooms, which is basically a smoke room, but they call them consumption rooms. We've limited the distances 300 feet from a school or a daycare, which is specifically allowed by the state act. It interestingly doesn't extend to churches like the State Liquor Control Act does. It leaves that out. So there's a debate on whether or not we can regulate distance from churches. We're doing more research on it to see if we have a good argument that that's just another form of time, place, and manner restriction. But there was a lot of debate during the legislative session of what was the reason for the distance from churches to begin with the liquor sales anyway. So what you will see when you review this proposed ordinance is that, yes, there are things that we may want to change. This is our best shot at what's going to be legal and doable for regulation. It'll come back to us on August 17th. Prior to that time, we could work at potential changes, potential floor amendments to that, but we have to have it in place by August 17th if it's going to be effective when people can start applying for growing applications for growing marijuana on September 1. So that's the reason that there's a little bit of a rush here. And it's very possible that once the state regulates it, we may be having to revisit this after September 1st, but at least we have the restrictions that we think we can uphold in place at this time. So that's my brief summary. Again, we don't have to debate the merits of the bill tonight, but if you have any questions on this global new Cannabis Regulation Act that the state has just passed, or what we're doing, please, I'm here to answer.
Mayor, councilors, Mr. Audio, and I'm sorry I keep talking tonight. The question though, our friendly neighbors to the north have kind of been the test pilot for this situation for a number of years now. And it seems to me the biggest issue that happens when you have an establishment that is growing a substantial amount of cannabis is there is an odor that many people are in favor of cannabis. Many people don't care. Many people are opposed to it. But I would say a great deal of people don't want to smell it 24 hours a day. And so there's ordinances that have been put into place in terms of controlling the odor through air scrubbers or charcoal or whatever they're doing with it. Is that something that we could implement into this type of situation? Because if you're around town, you can find where they're growing it in Albuquerque right now, and you'll be half a mile away and smelling it. And so,
Yes, and we have included a new section within our ordinance on nuisances. It specifically says that if you're growing agricultural products in a reasonable manner under commonly used methods, that does not create a nuisance. However, intense agriculture, which is what we're talking about here with marijuana, we are creating greater setback requirements, and we can, and the state will specifically, we just don't know how yet, regulate exactly that. And we do have the provision that if there is a smell emanating from an agricultural grow, that we can enforce that as a nuisance.
yeah, because I mean, 14,000 square feet per acre is our size limit on.
It's a
growing.
sizable thing. Yeah. No, and it's one of the main issues that people have a concern about. Now, we may not have done enough. We do, as I said, we don't have the guidance from the state as how far we can go with time, place, and manner yet. So that's one of those things we would probably have to flesh out as we go along.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors.
Councilor Lucero?
Procedurally, we have done ordinances in 3 steps. Basically, the first reading, second reading, then we take action on the third. How are we going to accomplish that if we try to sidestep one of our procedures of approving ordinances? Because it seems to me that we would have to follow somewhere, either have a special meeting to get the third reading in, or ask for an extension into September so we could approve it in September.
Councilor Murray, there is no legal requirement for quote a third reading. Simply an introduction, publication, and then you can set it for final action. If you choose to, you could set this for a public forum. You could do anything you wish, but it's not legally required. The reason why we need to have this in place by September 1 is the fact that they can be applying for licenses in locations where we don't want them if we don't have regulations.
So how long have we known about this?
What?
The date, September 1. How long have we known about this, that we were going to have to put something in place?
Well, the law went into effect. The law went into effect and it was effective on July 1. We collectively, all of New Mexico counties and municipalities have been hoping that the state would introduce their regulations so that we would have more guidance on what we should do. That has not happened.
Okay.
That's been the problem.
Okay. So the other problem I have with your nuisance, it looks like it has unintended consequences, because the way I read this, it looks like I might have my weeds out in the North 40, and somebody might consider that a nuisance and then take that issue to bring it against me.
And those are all of the issues that I want you folks, and listen to your constituents and you bring them up, and then we can address them when we come back and decide whether or not we were too broad in places or not broad enough.
And the other thing too is, I guess, has the state not codified the Cannabis Act? Because I mean, the way it reads right now, I think the Cannabis Act could have been coming from Colorado, the way it's stipulated in the ordinance.
We will look, everybody's simply been referring to it either with the bill number or the State Cannabis Regulation Act. And we will see if it has received a codified number prior to our action, and we'll include it if it has.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lucero?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be quick. To kind of Councilor Parker's issue as far as some of the things that I think we may have to address, and one thing in particular that's important to me, I don't know if the state addresses the safety of it, the chemicals, the machinery, the electricity that's used. I don't know if it's something that state addresses or we're going to have to address it. But as far as, and I know I've seen something here in the village somewhere about electricity and chemicals and how you dispose of them and the waste of it and all that other stuff. Is that something that we're gonna have to address, or do we even know that yet?
We don't know. I think the area that I'm the most concerned about is actually the manufacturer of marijuana products, because you're taking the raw product and then you're making it into oils and other things, and it's like a distilling process essentially. So there will definitely be state regulation of that. We're not sure what that's going to look like yet, and how far we can go and how far they're going to go. That's all going to have to be a moving. We may end up revisiting this a few times this year.
All right. Does anybody else have any more questions before we as to why this is here before us at
One
this
more,
time?
just how procedurally should we, making comments to Mr. Audio, how do we let the rest of the council know what we're thinking? I mean, we direct our comments to him. Is he going to broadcast them back out to the rest of the council?
You know what? It's a great question. I don't think we should look at this process as a attorney-client communications. If you want to send me a private communication, let me know. Say confidential attorney-client communication, or just confidential on it, and then I'll know. Otherwise, what I will do is I will forward it to Aaron of all of the issues coming in. I won't attribute them to anybody, but I will be working to get them all on our plate, and we, the attorneys and staff, Lori obviously is instrumental in this too, will get these fleshed out and see how far we think we can go with them. So any concerns, issues you have, send them on to me. And then, like I said, if you have something confidential you want to say, just tell me, and then I won't be forwarding that on.
Thank you.
So at this point, is there anything before we are moving on to number 8?
We do have a public comment for this one.
All right.
Okay. Hi, Madam Mayor. Hi, Council. So, I'm John Lopez, first of all. This is Morgan, my partner and my significant other. We got an LLC starting in April. Once this legislation went through, we got with an attorney that specializes in cannabis, and we're actually looking forward to getting our integrated cannabis microproduction license. So we're actually a company that's working on trying to obtain that on September 1st. And so we've been working since like April, and we've known that September 1st is when we needed to start applying. Now, I don't know exactly how the state was handling it, but we were notified by our attorney that that was going to be the date that we have to apply. We both have a background in healthcare. I work in hospice. I'm a social worker, and she's a nurse. She works in the neuro ICU, UNM hospital. So we got into this business just generally real quick. We wanted to make change. We know that there's been a stigma of the use of cannabis for the longest time. And we know all the research that goes into it, the positive effects, and how it can benefit people, not just within healthcare, but how it could benefit the community and different ways like education, just giving back, education, the economics, everything. We were reading articles prior to that, I believe Colorado in 1 year tripled the amount of income that it brought into its state to that of tobacco and alcohol, I believe, combined. So like upward of 120 some million. This is going to be a big problem. I mean, not a big problem, but like a big thing is what, the attorney was talking about is that, yeah, a big change essentially is that, I'm sorry, I'm not a public speaker. So
I think you're doing fine.
yeah. So, but essentially like, we've done all that we can do. And, I actually come out here to get my haircuts because I have a barber out here, and we talk a lot. And he told me, because I've been telling him like, we're hitting wall after wall after wall. We have all our paperwork, we have our LLC, we have everything that we can try to get our license. But where we're at is we hit a standpoint of, we need an area to produce. And so he offered me an acre of land that he's willing to lease me. And I checked with Aaron just a little bit ago, and it's on the agriculture, right, A1 zone. So, and I contacted the zoning city about a couple of weeks ago. And, at that time, this is prior to the recent on the 29th, there was a proposal by the state. And so my attorney actually attended that and provided us with a correspondence of a list of things that we would need to do in order to get that license by September 1st. And so the reason why we decided to come today is because I've checked with like every county, every city, and everyone's pretty much in the same boat. Like they don't know what to do, and I can't really legally do anything. I mean, we've looked at trying to get loans. There's no resources for us. We're handling everything financially on our own. We've paid almost $1,400 just trying to get, just for like a retainer and getting information pretty much. And so, where we're at is we also found a master grower that had his own personal license. And so now we're at a point where this acre of land is our best option. And so, we're trying to find out what we need to do in order to get approval of being able to essentially put, some type of either like infrastructure. We have to get creative with it because we don't have a lot of capital. So we're going to have to possibly use shipping containers. And I know the city of Albuquerque, there's a business that I contacted. I can't remember the name of it, but they can actually design these shipping containers to, essentially like deal with things like with smell of the product and various things to help our grow. We plan on at some point trying to be entirely environmental friendly. That's going to cost capital that we don't have. But that's a point where we want to get to. Our master grower had actually, his father, I think, worked out here. I don't know his name, but he worked as a grower of, I don't even know, just crops. But they actually got approval to get their soil certified as organic. We're planning on getting to that point to have everything certified, to be environmental friendly. That's the point that we're trying to get to. The license that we're trying to obtain is called the Integrated Cannabis Production Microbusiness License. And so that one would allow us to grow up to no more than 200 mature plants. We could also have one single retail store, down the road. We wouldn't necessarily put it out here. We're just looking for trying to get this land, if we can, approved, so that way we can put our production site on there and then just grow. And then, because if not, like, it's pretty much set up to where whoever has a lot of capital is going to benefit. And we're kind of in the boat with most small businesses where it's like we're having to try to, figure out different ways we can do things. And we're just like running after bump after bump after bump, just trying to get our foot in the door. And it's hard when everyone turns you away. Like I've talked to several like bank lenders and, obviously if everything federal, you can't, I've tried to look at loopholes of, and this is what everyone's going to be doing, is trying to look for loopholes of possibly like getting what was it that we were trying to get? We were trying to get like a mortgage loan essentially, and, trying to do it that way. And we just had to kept for the last months since April, just trying to find different routes that we could take. But now that we have this correspondence, we have to have everything approved prior to even starting or even getting the license. So, what we're seeking really is trying to just get this land approved here today, or figure out when we can actually just start getting everything set up. Essentially, that's what we're trying to figure out. I know that Aaron said something about August 17th is when the last date you guys would be making a decision on that. But I'm wondering if there's any possibility you guys would consider moving, the date, just because I know everyone's backed up, but we're kind of in this situation where we have till September 1st and everyone's going to be rushing to try to get this license. And I mean, we've spent so much time, effort, and money, and for it to not be able to give us a chance is, pretty tough. So that's what we're seeking.
Thank you.
Do you have anything?
Taking into consideration what John had just explained, it's just basically when looking at what the requirements are going to be, I know there's a lot to take into account here as far as, safety, nuisance laws and whatnot. But also we're asking is that the smaller businesses be taken into account so that we, have a chance. So
Thank you very much.
Especially just because being community members, New Mexico, a lot of people are going to be trying to come here to make money.
from out of state, and
If we're from this community, we plan on giving back to our community. And instead of outsourcing, I think it's beneficial to everyone, not just our business and our family, but everyone. So
Thank you very much for your comments.
thank you.
So if there are no more comments on the discussion, we're going to move into number 8, which is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2125. This is a resolution directing the publication of a notice of meeting and intent to consider adoption of an ordinance amending sections 1832 through 1845 and repealing section 2423 of the Village Code to provide zoning and permitting regulation for the grow, sale, production, and use of recreational cannabis pursuant to the Cannabis Regulation Act of 2021. Do we have a motion on this item?
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2125.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Councilor Burkett. Discussion? All right, let me take a vote. Councilor Parker? Aye. Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Moon? Aye. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Councilor Burkett. We're going to move into item number 9, which is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2126. This is a resolution approving the local government investment pool LGIP expenditure policy. Ron, would you like to speak to this item?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This is a policy that I've advised the last couple of meetings that we'd be having. This is a resolution that develops policy. It can obviously be changed by the governing body. This is a recommendation that is, we believe is prudent, asking for 50% of the money should remain in the fund, and that monies spent from the pool shall not be spent on payroll, recurring expenses, or any subscriptions. And of course, the governing body will approve any monies expended from the pool. So the purpose of this is to be prudent as far as this amount of money, and at the same time, the pool can be spent on anything that the governing body chooses according to the state. So what we've recommended here is that there are some limitations on how the money should be spent. And we are, like I said, we're asking for 50% to remain in the fund. And this resolution can be changed or amended at any time by the governing body.
Other questions for Ron on his policy considerations, Councilor Murray?
Sorry to be a pain in the butt, but thank you, Mayor. Ron, the only thing that concerns me is the 50% of the total amount. So is that per year, or is that saying that we're going to keep $2.18 million And then as it grows, it never falls below that baseline.
As it grows, it'll still remain at 50%.
So you can take another 50% out of that 2.1?
No, if it grows up to 5 million, and then it would be 2.5 million.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying there should be a base amount where it never falls below that we take out.
Well, that's what the 50% would be.
Well, I understand that, but, all right, so here's my scenario. We take 50% out, we're left with 2.1 million, give or take. Next year, do we take another 50% of that 2.1 million out
No, it's just 50%,
of the base amount?
period,
Okay.
of the base.
One time, but I mean, what happens to the money that continues to grow because it's in the LGIP?
Well, it's going to continue to garner some interest. And then if the governing body wants to have a different percentage, you can do that.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Could I have a motion on item number 9?
I do have one other question, sorry. I think I agree with Councilor Murray that we need to have like a defined dollar amount in here as how much we want to leave in the account. Otherwise, it does get ambiguous in my mind as well.
So then we would be, let's say we agreed at 50%. 50% of the current amount is what is our base. Okay, we can amend that, right?
Yeah.
So can we make that amendment right now? I know it's late, but can we do the math so that we've got, because I'm not quite sure how much we have in the LGIP right now, maybe.
That number is accurate as of Friday.
Okay, as of
So-
Friday, okay.
2,180,000 and some change.
Okay, okay. Aaron, you may need to be ready to put a little bit of an amendment into this.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so we have, and we could possibly even consider it a friendly amendment. A friendly amendment to make it clear that in our policy resolution that it's 50% of the current rate, and then we're going to put the dollar amount in there. Okay, so we never fall below that amount unless the council decides that we have to, but.
I will make a motion to approve 2126 with that amendment.
All right, thank you. Got a second?
Second.
All right. As I say, we're going to think of it as a friendly amendment, so I'm going to take a vote on it. Council Parker? Burkett?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes?
Right? I'm sorry, right.
Right?
Oh, my God.
Wrong.
To my right.
Oh, God.
Aye.
I apologize,
Yes.
Councilor Murray. Not that Councilor Wright, it wasn't a fine man. You're not Councilor Wright. Oh, God. All right, never mind. All right, pass, thank you. All right, the last one, before we go into closed session, is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2127, a resolution approving the adoption of the National Incident Management System, NIMS, as a basis for incident management in the Village of Corrales. Tanya?
Just give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, just tell us why it's a good idea. If you like it, then we like it.
Thank you. Good morning. No, good evening, Mayor, Council, and Administrator Curry. NIMS is required. Our last.
Seems right.
We last adopted in 2004, which was a requirement in 2004, and it's a requirement for certain monies. It's also what the fire department has used for years. It's been a state law for years that we follow ICS. It's all Sea Basin money. We had to have that in to get that kind of money, and we'd like to get more. And it also makes sense. When we have disasters, we need to be able to speak a common language. We need to understand what we're doing. Yes, I know there's some training all of you are supposed to take. And we've kind of fallen behind due to COVID, but actually there's more online trainings. But I do ask that you approve it, and I will be happy to stand for any questions.
Do I have any questions?
Mayor, I move that we approve 2127.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, thank you. That was a second from Councilor Knight. Councilor Parker? Yes. Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The last item under new business is the closed executive session. So the meeting of the governing body now intends to go into closed session pursuant to exceptions under NMSA 1978, Section 1015, H8 for the purpose of discussing the potential purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body. So the closure now requires a majority vote of quorum of the governing body. Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, I'm going to take it by roll call vote. Counselor Lucero? Aye. Counselor Murray?
Yes.
Counselor Knight? Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Did we get Counselor
Yes,
Knight on there?
you got me.
Yes, okay. The, thank you. The meeting is now closed. Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote to reopen the meeting. Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Burkett?
Here.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
Here.
Counselor Lucero? All right, the meeting is now reopened. The matters discussed in the closed meeting were limited only to those matters specified in the motion for closure. The statement will be approved as part of the minutes under section 10:15(1)(g). There were no matters requiring action. All right, at this point, we're going to move into, there is nothing for J. I'm working on it. And then we will, anybody, I know we'll be looking at the cannabis ordinance again on the 17th of August. Do we have other items at this point?
Do we have a list of a wish list drawn up for the LGIP money?
You know, we probably could put a few things together. I'm gonna guess that yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Now that we know what our general budget is, and remember, we don't have to spend them.
Well, it's like
I know.
tonight, we got new monies, it exceeded the budget from last year.
Well, and that is how we wound up with the LGIP. And I think part of it is to get, and I think we're doing better, but to get your budget, which is just your hope, your dream, real close to your actuals. And I think for a long time, because they weren't quite sure where to do it, they,
Well, do you hold that in reserve and then take less out of the budget?
yeah, I think if you had those
reserve?
monies, you could have two choices, I think.
Whatever.
Right.
Discussion.
Okay, discussion, and we will, okay, so we'll have some LGIP projects, and we better be prepared for the public to come in with some Lulus.
Well,
Bubble machine, the popcorn machine, the whole thing.
have we even started thinking about what's going through the legislature,
Yes.
that list? And so forth?
Yes, and we're gonna be running into that. We may have a preliminary for that next month, because then generally it comes up pretty fast in September. So we will undoubtedly have some capital outlay. And then, we did get our American Recovery Act monies is sitting there. We're going to be distributed, I guess Ronnie didn't really mention that, a little over $1 million. For some reason, they're going to put it in half. So again, that money, we could leverage that to do some other things, so that we might not need capital outlay. Right, exactly. So there's some things that I think we could, and talking to Michael Chavez today with his woes with the valves and everything on our wastewater
How's
system.
the bike connection coming? Did that start yet?
It hasn't started yet, but we got the money for it. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a hard part right now. So, okay, so all good ideas. We'll have an LGIP project list. We will probably have the capital outlay kind of draft. And again, remember, everybody gets to have their oar in, and we will have the staff come and we will find out what it is they want. And then we will make a list, and then the legislature will do whatever they want. Yeah, but they're pretty good to us. So.
You know, maybe
Okay.
we should just, yeah, that would be on my list, just to kind of update that we haven't started that yet, because people are asking me about that.
Okay, the bike, yeah, we could get an update for that,
Yeah,
and
I'm sure
also Meadowlark.
Bill will be wanting to know about that too.
All right, and again, if you have items for the agenda, please let Aaron know, and we will try to never have an agenda quite this packed again.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Adjourned. Bye. Thank you, everybody. We'll